Everybody, happy Friday. Welcome to our special council meeting. It is May 23rd, 2025. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I will pass it to Erica to do roll call and share with announcements with the public.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Barber appears to be absent. Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Rash.
Here.
And Councilmember Smith.
Here.
And Mr. Mayor.
Here.
I'll go ahead and announce how to participate. Information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is available on this meeting's agenda, which is online at monterey.gov/agendas. Remote commenters, you will be muted until it is your turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you're connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In-person attendees must keep phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in the democratic process in your city government.
Thanks, Erica. All right. And with that, we will go to our public appearance items. Number one on the agenda is to receive a presentation on the draft local road safety plan. I just want to start off by thanking staff for all the work that you've done in getting this going. And I know that there's been a lot of efforts and community engagement as it relates to this. And obviously this has to do with public safety. And so I was proud to be able to attend and participate in those sessions. And hopefully we can hear some more public comment in this session today. So with that, I'll pass it to Hans for staff introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. The local road safety plan has the objective or the goal to look at our collisions that we have here in the city, to analyze those collision trends and to identify potential countermeasures, of course, with the objective to improve road safety for all of our users here in the city, visitors, residents alike. The work is funded through a grant, and it has started quite a while ago, but we felt it's important to present to you and the community the draft status of this local road safety plan. And I think our engineering assistant, Marisa Garcia, will appreciate to present to you, and also I think she appreciates the crowd in the council chamber listening to this good work that we are doing.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor, Council members. I'm here today to present the draft local road safety plan. And next slide, please. So we'll start with, what is a local road safety plan? So it's a comprehensive data-driven safety plan that coordinates the efforts of a wide range of organizations to reduce traffic accidents and fatalities. That's really the core of what this plan is. We look at emphasis areas and we try and strategically pace ourselves for future funding for safety roadway improvements. Next slide, please. So the project purpose and outcomes was that is the mic. Understand the factors that contribute to collisions, develop strategies to reduce traffic injuries, develop an action plan to prioritize safety improvements, and increase the city's competitiveness for safety funding. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. As Hans said, we were able to fund this project through a SS4A, or Safe Streets and Roads for All grant from the Federal Highway Administration. So we were awarded $200,000 in the first round of competitive funding for an action planning grant. So now this summer, we're going to be working towards doing an implementation grant due to all the effort from this first round. So we're really hoping to go after that new grant program that will be available to us. We do want to add a little caveat to that to say that all of us who have been finishing our action planning grants are now going after to the same implementation funding. So it's going to be a really competitive process. And with the way that funding is for infrastructure right now, it's really hard to achieve the benefit cost ratios to make a very competitive project. The cost of infrastructure is it's increasing enormously with inflation and with scarcity of materials. So just wanted to add that in there. Next slide. So some quick facts. We had just over 2,000 collisions during a 5-year period. we had 6 fatalities and 36 serious injuries. We do just want to say that if you look at the pie chart to your left, you'll see that the fatalities make up less than 0.5% of all collisions that happened within that time period. And then fatal and serious injuries, which are the focus of Vision Zero, made up 2% of all the collisions that occurred during that 5-year period. I do want to also acknowledge our police department because they provided this information, as well as our ISD division, who was the ones who made it happen behind the scenes, getting the information from the police department to me so that we could process this information. We also do want to acknowledge that this data includes 2020 and 2021. We all know that travel patterns were a little different during those 2 years, but this is a continuous process. So you're seeing this 5-year period, but then in another 5 years, you're going to see 2024 to 2029. So we'll see how trends change over time. We have some of the highest percentages of the type of collisions that we saw. So we had the improper turning, speeding, and violating the right-of-way. I did print out the vehicle code if you want me to go over that again, but I figured it might be a little dry and we're trying to get out of here. So just wanted to leave that as an option. Also, we do want to acknowledge that all of these are reported collisions. We do have collisions that occur in the world that are not reported to the police department. And if they're not reported, we're not able to learn about what was the cause, what was the level of injury associated with those collisions. So just wanted to acknowledge that unreported collisions do happen. Next slide, please. So the local road safety plan vision and goals. So this was the goal of the document. And I know that it's extremely small up on the screen, but all of this is available in the project plan. But the overall vision is to enhance the transportation network for all users to move towards a goal of 0 traffic fatalities or serious injuries. So really targeting the serious injury and fatality severity of collisions. Next slide, please. We do also want to acknowledge all the community outreach that went into this. We had 3 pop-up events where we spoke with the community at Parking Day. We attended Trunk or Treat, and then we also did a farmer's market very recently. Also, we have our officer in the room today, and he spent an entire afternoon with us as part of a stakeholder effort where we went out and we looked at several locations throughout this process. And we had a group with planning and fire and PD just to have a bunch of different perspectives to look at this process. We also did have the community meetings, and thank you, Mayor, for attending. And then we had an online survey that went throughout the course of this project. Next slide, please. From all that information, we developed 4 emphasis areas, and this is based on the collision patterns and the community feedback. So emphasis area 1 was vulnerable road users. Emphasis area 2 was signal, signs, and turning violations. And emphasis area 3, intersection crashes. And emphasis area 4, speeding. In the plan, we do have some policies and options that we can look at exploring further. Not all of these options are engineering options. There's also programs and policies that we can put into place to further these goals. So you'll often hear us refer to like the 5 E's. So emergency response, enforcement, engineering, education. So those also are included as options in this plan. Next slide. From all of that information, we also pulled out these case study locations. So we had 10 locations throughout the city, and these are the locations that we visited with a group of staff and also a member from the Transportation Agency for Monterey County in order to take a more closer look at these locations. These locations we looked at because there was either an interesting pattern, it had a severe or fatal injury at it, and we just wanted to take a closer look. All of these case study locations are in the appendix of this plan, so you can look at the traffic patterns for them specifically. Next slide, please. So these are what those case study sheets look like. They also have potential countermeasures identified. It's really important to note that these are not projects. These are simply ideas. They're not even considered what we would call concepts. And many of these different ideas of countermeasures, some will mutually exclude the other. So if one option is a roundabout and the other option is a signal, you can't have both at the intersection. So all of these are really just, we're taking a look at everything, and then we'll come back at a later date with a vision to present to you that you would be able to weigh in on. So we just wanted to say, like, all of these locations, there is no specific project for the location. So we still have a lot of options on the table for these locations. Next slide. So with that, our next steps is, upon the adoption of this plan, which we will bring it back to you, and I believe the last council meeting in July is what currently is planned. Staff will then be able to take this adopted plan, develop an investment program to address the city's crash reduction goals, work closer with our project partners like the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, who is also going through this process for a local road safety plan, and further all these goals towards this Vision Zero, this goal for serious and fatal injuries. And next slide, please. With that, I will take us to questions, but I did want to put up the project website for the local road safety plan, and the draft plan is published on that city website. So it's available for you to look at, and all the appendices are available with those case study sheets and some of the results from public outreach.
Awesome. Thank you. Great presentation. That will open up to the council for questions. We'll start with Councilman Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you, Marissa, for the presentation and for all the information. I have a couple questions about how, I guess more relating to the case studies. Were these case studies developed based on data? So what you had mentioned earlier about, fatal injuries and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it was any number of reasons. It was a specific pattern of type of collisions, quantity of collisions, a unique characteristic that made it stand out. Each of them were kind of pulled out of the list of all locations as a result of that. So no one was pulled into the case study sheet for exactly the same reason.
Got it. Were there any case studies or anything else on the plan that was developed or initiated through resident comments?
Yeah, so because how we look, we have split it into two groups where we have the case study sheet where we looked at something more closely on one in one location, and then we have the emphasis areas where we heard a lot from people that there is a speeding concern on their streets. And then we also looked at collisions related to speeding concerns. So that becomes an emphasis area. When you're looking at the broader emphasis area of speeding, there's a lot more options on the table, including policy and education options that they didn't get attributed to a case study sheet because we were talking more broadly about that one particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
So just to follow up to that, this being an opportunity for the public also to learn more about this plan, is there still opportunity going forward for folks who are now maybe looking a little bit more closely at their neighborhood to contribute more feedback?
Yes, no, we're taking any feedback through until the final project or the final adoption of the plan when we take it back to you. But the other thing it's really important about these local road safety plans is you need to have this to be eligible for highway safety improvement program funding. And as a part of that, we have to continuously update these plans. So if you have a comment now, share it. But also, if you have a comment in 2 years, share it, because we have to update these plans again in 3 to 5 years, depending on which program we're applying to. So these are going to be continuously updated process. So even just right now, this isn't the end. It's going to be continuing.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah,
please.
So the data is gathered, I'm guessing in part from Switters, the traffic information.
We actually went straight to the source and we got it from the Monterey Police Department.
Okay,
So we didn't use Switters in this case because actually Switters gets the information from Monterey Police
Right.
Department.
right.
And Switters has gone through a massive overhaul, and actually a good portion of the time the data hasn't been available.
Right.
And they're always on about a 8-month to year lag of
Right.
processing data.
Okay, okay, good. So you actually work with pulling the records and looking at the police reports,
So
or at least the data you were looking for was extracted from the police
Exactly.
reports.
yeah, we looked at like the summary reports. We didn't look at individual police reports. And then the other thing is all information that we used to analyze this, we removed personally identifying information. So
Mhm.
that's why it was mainly an extraction of what you have in that front CHP 555 form.
Right, right. So another interesting piece of this data look, once this moves forward and when you're starting to write grants and applications for additional funding, is the time of day, DUI factor, under the influence of anything, child on board, lone driver, the pedestrian collisions may not be involving a vehicle, but it's a collision if they go down
Mhm.
all by themselves. So it really, there's a lot more data that you can go to with the specific qualifications moving forward with the grant. And I always say that because the public needs to hear that. That's how grants are obtained. Once you get the scope of the grant, then you can write the grant and use the data. Is there a possibility moving forward that having this road safety plan would enable us to identify locations throughout our city where we know we are not hitting the education, we are not hitting the enforcement? Because I imagine all of us here most often speeding, turning maneuver violations, too much traffic in certain areas. So that's kind of, yes, we can anecdotally say, yes, true. But what does that mean in terms of collisions, and what does that mean for education and enforcement? So if you could answer a little bit, what do we do now? Once we have this, what's then the nexus to identify locations where we say, we aren't hitting the education here. We need more enforcement here. So maybe we write grants so that we can get some support for our police department. So maybe they're able to acquire and budget for and get an additional motor officer. So if you could make the connection, what's the nexus after this report is finalized to enable us to start throwing the solutions?
Yeah, and one of them that comes to mind is the Office of Traffic Safety Grant Program, but that would need to be in partnership with our police department. But when we do these larger like education, we a lot of times talk about it more broadly and not location specific. So we're going to go back to that emphasis area and say, when we do an education campaign, we saw all the issues at the intersections, not obeying signs and speeding. And those were because driver behavior is one of the most difficult issues to overcome, because we can engineer only so much, but we need behavior change, which is really the education. But we would probably look at it more broadly and not as location specific, targeting those emphasis areas.
Yeah. It's just one anecdote. My grandson has a learner's permit, and one of the things we're doing is spending time driving with him. And I pointed to a video I wanted him to watch. He actually did it. He watched the video. And the next day he said, here's what I learned. And he was rolling through the crosswalks too far for his stops. And now that's one of the things he's identified that he needs to work on, is stopping on the beginning of the crosswalk instead of 5 feet into the crosswalk. So that is such a simple thing that a new driver learning needs to have that education. And we don't teach driver's education in schools anymore. It's reliant on the parents. And then the driver's school that they have to go get. So the linkage to me is the huge opportunity for education. But it'd be interesting to see reports that include data and the age of the drivers. So young drivers, senior drivers, and that's always interesting data. And I see she's got the answers.
Thank you, Andrea Rennie, Public Works Director. I just want to say that while this has been a huge effort in gathering data, Marissa and I, for the past 6-7 years, we always look at everything that includes a pedestrian,
Right.
a bicyclist, a fatality, or a serious injury. So we're doing this study and this gathering of information, the massive one, but we always constantly are doing that. So this is not a one-time thing.
Yeah.
We will continue to do that, and we work very closely with our police department. So if we see trends, we look at the ages of the driver, other factors, weather or day, night. So we are always looking at these things, and we work with the police department if we see trends or other areas that we need to work on, whether it's education or enforcement.
Yeah, great. And that's great information for the public to know that it's not just based on a police report and then it stops there. It's not just on a traffic ticket, or it's not just on any of the other 5 E's, but it's really a holistic approach that helps a community identify, where we could potentially save lives. And that's the whole thing about, net zero. We are trying to prevent all deaths, all collisions, and all injuries. And so it's a lofty goal. It's almost impossible. But if we don't respond to what we know are creating problems, then we're derelict in our efforts as public policy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Please, Councilmember Rush.
Marissa, will this include the collisions at 68 and Skyline Forest Road when the car ends up on 68?
So this actually will not, because that intersection is fully outside our jurisdiction. So that's actually, it's going to go with the CHP. So they'll be the, the enforcement body of record on any of those collisions. We've worked with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, and we do know that that intersection is going to be picked up in their countywide effort, which does include things on the state highway. So the county is doing a huge effort, and I believe there's actually open community outreach that they're asking for concerns right now. So I think right now is actually the best time to reach out to them. I think they have a survey out right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. And since we're going to be talking about crosswalks, and maybe this is for later, could you just take a minute or two and explain the science of the green cross marks for bicycles, and why was green chosen, and what are the studies on safety, and are those bike lanes working?
Yeah, I'm gonna pass that off.
Sure.
So green was chosen, it was selected by a national committee of traffic engineers who analyze this kind of stuff. But they selected green as kind of the official color for bikes in the manual of uniform traffic control devices, not to get too nerdy. There is a little bit of data that says the green helps in conflict areas. So I've seen some agencies where they just paint continuously all the way down the street green. Where we really like to use the green is if a bike is like weaving or transitioning or at the intersection. So the green has an effectiveness in increasing bike visibility at intersections and in conflict areas where they might need to transition over a lane. And so there's some data behind it. There is a national committee of traffic engineers who analyze and study this and collect data. So it wasn't a local decision, but nationally green was selected as kind of the official color.
Great. And will that be in the report, some kind of reference or not?
We do have high level recommendations for like signs and markings in the report as a potential countermeasure for certain types of collision profiles. So we don't have it like spelled out specifically that we must use green at this intersection or this area, but we have looked at some of the collision profiles and the trends, the emphasis areas, and there is recommendation for enhancing signage or pavement markings.
Great. Thank you, Andrew.
Awesome. It's kind of alluding a little bit to the Highway 68 question. I know this came up in the community listening sessions that staff hosted. What about the intersections that intersect with neighboring jurisdictions? How much interaction is there with our neighboring jurisdictions towards addressing those intersections and making sure that the flow or transition into a neighboring jurisdiction is addressed?
So we actually have an interesting situation where most of our transition to other jurisdictions happens mid-block. So Pacific Grove, for example, a good portion of those streets actually they're transitioning mid-block. The vast majority of our intersections where we transfer jurisdiction are actually all Caltrans. So Caltrans has the jurisdictional authority over all of those locations. So I'm thinking of the intersection of Fremont and Camino Aguajito. That's fully Caltrans jurisdiction because it's the entrance and exit of the off ramps. So so any for whatever reason, we ended up where all of them are Caltrans, where we're transitioning jurisdictions, and we got lucky that they've been mid-block. So we do work with our partners all the time at other agencies just to make sure there's a continuation of striping. But the difficulties with transitioning intersections, we haven't had to deal with that specific issue.
And I hear that there are challenges at times working with Caltrans. What has your experience been as it relates to the local road safety plan in interacting with them?
So Caltrans, we haven't worked a lot with them on this plan because this plan's focused on everything that's been within our jurisdiction. And then talking to the community and letting them know which intersections are and are not in our jurisdiction. So this plan hasn't worked directly with Caltrans on. I know that they are working with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County on their plan because there is the greater overlap of jurisdictions because they're looking at the state highways as well as local roads.
Awesome. Okay. And then last question, and this is just more for informational purposes for the public. Now that we're wrapping this up, we're going to be approving this, I'm assuming today. What does it look like for the public to be able to provide additional input? Like how one, for the public, how can they provide that information? But two, just process wise, how do we take the information and input that's already been provided with any new additional input that advances the funding opportunities moving forward?
So a lot of it is that they can contact staff directly, and I believe my contact information is on the project website, or suggest at monterey.org, which is kind of our clearinghouse of an easy way to contact the city. With this, a specific comment might not end up in the plan. However, we do keep all of these, any public feedback that we receive, we keep all of it. So then when I go and write a grant application in 2 years, in 5 years, and it ends up being that specific location where someone's identified, I'm able to pull whatever comments they provided into the narrative of whatever the grant is that I'm writing. So your comment may not make it is specifically within the plan, but it's going to get carried throughout the whole process. And when we do look at the design, we do take into consideration what we have heard from the public.
Awesome. And then can you just reiterate the sites that folks can go to provide additional input? It's the local road safety plan.
Yeah, Nat, can I have you pull up the question slide?
HaveYourSayMonterey.org is one of them.
It is HaveYourSayMonterey.org, and I think it's actually it's just local road safety plan is like the end link of it, and so you can easily access that from our city website as well. But yes, also up on the screen again.
Beautiful, beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you again for all the work that's done around this. At this point, we're going to open it up for public comment. And so I'm just going to describe this, and this is for all of our public comments. So for this item, the next item, what we do is we identify folks at the beginning of the public comment period. Once those folks are identified, we'll cut it off. So only those folks that identify themselves will be able to speak. So if you raise your hand or identify yourself after that cutoff period, we won't take those comments. You have to identify yourself at the beginning, and then we'll cut it off. So I'm going to start with folks on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you can navigate your way to the raise hand function. In the meantime, we'll give them a second. I'll check in the chamber. Does anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? If you would be willing to stand up to the left of the podium. It's just this item for the local road safety plan.
Oh.
Does anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item?
It's shocking.
I'm not seeing any takers. Would you like to speak on this item? Yep. So if you wouldn't mind standing up to the left of the podium, and then we'll make sure we get you in a second here. Anybody else in the chamber? Just want to make sure we're capturing everybody. All right. So we'll go ahead and cut it off to the chamber to the one speaker, and then I'll jump back to Zoom real quick and do a countdown to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How many do we have on Zoom?
There are 2 remote participants with their hands raised.
We have 2 folks on Zoom with
3.
hand raised. 3? Okay, so we'll go ahead and cut it off at those 3 and we'll go ahead and start here in the chamber.
Thank you.
Please.
It's very quick. I may have misunderstood what you said.
And
It
sorry, I just want to make sure you speak right into the mic because when folks are online, it makes it hard to hear.
Okay. My only question is when I get off of Moonrose, which is partly the state property, I realize, and then get onto Highway 1, when it's busy on the highway and they're trying to line up on the off ramp to get into the, say, the hospital,
Mhm.
it's almost an accident waiting to happen. So that's my comment.
Awesome.
And I don't know if you guys can work with the state at all with this, but it's worth an effort, I think.
Absolutely. After we close out public comment, we'll make sure to have staff come up and then maybe answer that question for you. Thank you for that. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and go to our callers on Zoom.
Dr. Ree Chang, I'll go ahead and allow you to unmute.
Perfect. Hello. All right. My name is Dr. Ree Chang. I am a resident and bike commuter both for work and for my daily life. So I think this presentation was a great first step in recognizing some of those, vulnerable road users like bicyclists, but we really need to be specific and bold about what these bicycle implementations are. So I think as we think more about road safety, I'm really encouraging us also to be considering what this means with the multimodal plan and considering bikes a lot more in street redesign than what's currently being done. So for example, the multimodal plan for Monterey includes some really outdated and dangerous recommendations that are inadequate to actually encourage the safe use of non-car methods of transportation. Like for example, the class 3 bikeways, like what are proposed for Pacific Street, these aren't actually bikeways or changes to road design. They're simply painting what's called a sharrow that's supposed to help indicate where a biker is supposed to bike to help stay out of the door zone. But what we actually see are that these kinds of changes actually encourage drivers to pass bikers dangerously close and frustrates drivers that they have to wait behind bikers, and also kind of creates a false sense that we are supposedly improving bike infrastructure in a city when what we've actually done is really just create more dangerous conditions for bikers. There's a study back in 2016 published in the journal Safety that found that, physically protected bike paths were actually associated with, 23% fewer injuries, whereas bike injuries associated with these sharrow paths were actually twice as likely to be associated with more severe injury than a road without any bike route at all. So as we're considering this vulnerable population, I just really want to raise that good bike infrastructure takes political courage. And it takes an effort beyond simply painting a sharrow on the street. It sometimes takes prioritizing the life and safety of bikers over a few parking spots. And I'm not saying that this is easy, but I'm asking that as we are considering the safety of everyone on our roads, that we start putting actual action behind these words. Class 3 bikeways are really well-intentioned improvements, but they're not actually improvements at all. What we need are separate painted class 2 bike lanes at a minimum. And you'll see this written time and time again in the public comments in that survey. We need engineered methods to keep us safe instead of these, idealized painted sharrows that pit cars against bikers. And I'm really asking that you don't wait for one of us to die by being hit by a car to have the political guts to help improve our streets for everyone. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and ask Marianne to unmute.
Yes, I'm here just to gain some information and I will raise my hand if I have a comment.
This is the time to make a comment on this item.
I feel like it's an important item for Jefferson Street and Franklin Street, and those are my concerns. So you've included part of it, and I don't have any other comment at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Marianne. And thank you, Dr. Chang. We're going to go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the council for motion and deliberation. But first, I just thought maybe I pass it to staff to see if they had any comments in regards to some of the questions and comments that came up. I do know while staff is navigating their way up that Jefferson and Franklin were included as part of the road safety plan, and there was locations identified during the discussions regarding that.
Yeah, we do have, we will definitely take this information down. But this is a receive and a presentation. We're actually not adopting the plan today, that we're bringing it back to you in hopefully the end of July is the
Perfect.
target.
Thank you. And then there was I'm trying to remember what the comment was.
We gave our information.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for it. Okay. Council, any last minute comments as it relates to this item, please?
Oh, I just so appreciate Dr. Chang's remark. And I admit bicycles and bicycle lanes and transportation has never been my big thing, but it does confuse me why we wouldn't mandate throughout the state the protected bike lanes, especially on new roads, but even on remodeled ones. It's just so obvious that we have to do that. And we've got to get people more onto bikes, but they aren't going to get onto bicycles unless they're safe.
100%.
So I appreciate your comment, Dr. Chang.
Thank you, Jean. Any other comments on this one? I couldn't agree with you more, Jean. I think the challenge is, and I can't remember who I was talking to earlier today about this. As an avid cyclist, I ride my bike regularly throughout the region. There are many times where it's scary riding my bike and just have to use extra caution. And even then, you don't always have control over the environment around you. But the challenge with the idea of creating protected bike lanes is that rub with parking. And we would feel that. I mean, if an item came in front of us around taking up parking spots, I guarantee you that folks are going to show up and be really upset around taking those parking spaces. But I would offer that in certain scenarios, certain situations, that might be the right choice.
Right.
And that's exactly what Dr. Chang was saying. We need to make those hard political decisions to move the city forward in a way that is the kind of community that we're aspiring to be. And when we get people out walking and biking around, that means we're doing the right thing, because we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We're getting people out of their vehicles and moving around. And one of the things that I hear quite often when I talk about this is you're not going to get everybody walking and cycling. Nobody's saying that. No, we're not saying completely convert all of our streets into pedestrian and bikes only. But it's about trying to find those right locations to do it. Where are those main corridors that we could do it? What would be easier is if we were the first council building out this city and creating it in the way that we knew that we can in today's society with the knowledge that we have. But we kind of have to work with the infrastructure that we have. And I think we need to make those tough decisions. So I welcome that. And I know it's the first part of the local road safety plan is cyclists. So there's a whole section on that. I look forward to continuing those dialogues. I also wanted to touch on something that you brought up, Ed, in regards to the data around the age. I think that's really important. I almost wonder, I just think about when I first got my license, right? Or when I got my driver's permit, I was studying. I wanted to make sure I passed it. So I was really knowledgeable, right? It was all fresh in my mind, and I was actually hyper aware or hypersensitive to those things. So I just wonder where that education might slip over time and how behaviors change. And so the data would be helpful and important to look at as it relates to that. And I think it's almost easier to influence minors and youth when they're first starting off, because I think there's a lot of excitement around getting your driver's license and what that means. I mean, they're still in the mindset of being in an education mindset. But it's how do we capture folks once they become more independent, that I think is I think a hard nut to crack. And it kind of leads to my last point. And then I see you want to add some comments here. But the importance of data. We're only stronger when we have data. We can all speak to our personal feelings about things. But I just really appreciate Public Works and the police department working in partnership with ISD on collecting this data and utilizing it. And the more information and data that we can use to help drive these policy decisions moving forward, the better that we'll all be for it. So
Yeah.
I'll pass it your way, Ed.
Yeah, and I'm two things I wanted to add. There are some cities that no longer even take collision reports unless it's a fatality or it's an injury report. There are some cities that have just cut that service out and they expect you to just go through your insurance companies. I don't know how those cities gather the data to apply for grants if they don't gather the data at the front end. So our police department does that. They take reports. And that's very, very important information and data to hold and be able to provide that to public works and city engineers for an example such as this. The other thing I wanted to say is we've had this conversation, but I didn't want to lose out of the fact that we have a recreational trail. Now, I know that that's not roadway, but when I find that I want to go to New Monterey or deep into East Side, I use the rec trail. So I use the rec trail as east and west, north and south, depending on which part of the curve you're on.
Yeah.
But I use that and then I deviate out to the straight line. So sometimes on the rec trail, it's a little bit longer, but it's a lot safer. So utilizing the rec trail is part of our transitional pieces when we're trying to navigate uptown, downtown, crosstown. We've always got to remember to have that in our data, our information, and our pieces of education, because that is really a safe way to go instead of going down Del Monte. And it's a safe way to go down on the rec trail when you want to get down to the other end of Franklin, because then when you get to the intersections, you've got controlled signal lights. So I just want to make sure we don't ever lose the sight of the fact that our forefathers were really smart and planned for that. Thank you for all those that served on the city council and the regional efforts to get the recreational trail for 18 miles. And now we're working on FORTAG. That's another opportunity to get away from traffic and be on the road. So it takes a long range planning, regional planning, but I didn't want to not say something about the recreational trail.
Yeah, no, I ride on the rec trail quite often. And I think it's a wonderful asset in the city of Monterey and throughout the region, right? It's not just in the city. Yes, and
always needs improvement.
it's not enough when you're talking about cycling, biking safety. You know, I live on Franklin, and when I'm going to MPS, it's easier for me to just cut across town. I'm imagining anybody that lives in Monte Vista, that let's say is going to MPS, doesn't make sense for them to go all the way to the rec trail to then cut back around. So yes, it's a wonderful asset, but I also caution us to rely on that too much to say that that's the solution towards our bicycle safety in the city. So all great things, and it's always, I'm thankful to be on the council and to be a resident in the city of Monterey, because our forefathers, you're absolutely right, I think helped create some really great foundation for us.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a lot more work to do. So with that, thank you for that wonderful dialogue. Thanks again to staff for all the work on this, and we'll go ahead and move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item number 2, to adopt a resolution authorizing and approving one or more locations for rainbow crosswalks. And with that, I will pass it to Hans for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We should give the audience an opportunity to leave who were just here for local road safety. So now is your chance.
Don't everybody leave. I mean, come on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Council, the item you asked for your approval today is the question of whether you want to place a rainbow crosswalk or several rainbow crosswalks in the city right away. Over the past, you can sit down, it takes a little longer, Mark.
Oh, really?
Over the past,
No, he wanted to leave.
so this is the question in front of you today. Over the past 3 days, since we posted the agenda, we have received a number of comments from residents and non-residents about this topic. I want to give you the latest count of the folks that are in favor and of the folks that are against this recommendation. We have 57 emails, statements in favor of the crosswalk and 50 against placing rainbow crosswalks into the city right away. And this trend is pretty consistent. But before I talk more about, or before we present the topic, it's my job and responsibility to clarify a few items that were brought up also in those emails. First of all, it was my decision to place this item on today's special meeting agenda. And let me explain why. As background, our most recent city council meetings have been very, very long ones. This week's council meeting lasted past 11:30 p.m. Other recent meetings have gone past 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. as well. Our agendas that we present to the council and to the public remain packed with a multitude of topics, and many of them trigger robust discussions. Today's special meeting was scheduled after we polled the council members twice and asked them to make themselves available. Today was chosen because this was the day and time when we had the most council members available. And even today, as you can see, unfortunately, Dr. Barber couldn't join us. So for today, we scheduled the update for the draft of the local road safety plan and also the item for the rainbow crosswalk. And we also anticipated that we would have 2 additional closed session items carried over from this week's Tuesday meeting. That was the first reason why I put it on the agenda, to de-stretch our council agendas. Number 2 was that I felt that the rainbow crosswalks fits within the city council's adopted value drivers, which state that the city is committed to fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are the city council's value drivers. The furtherance of the city value is evidenced by the resolution passed unanimously by the city council to raise the rainbow flag annually during Pride Month. In my assessment, placing a rainbow crosswalk further supports council's existing policies. Lastly, I understand that the cost of a crosswalk installation is a concern for many of our residents. And yes, one has to balance the checkbook by deciding what we must afford and what we can afford. In other words, you need to fix a leaky roof first before you replace a faded carpet. The community and the council will need to address the cost as well. Balancing the wants with the needs is nothing new for us. Do we invest into training for engineers by cutting recreational programs? Do we cut the book purchasing budget for the library and allocate those cost or funds to the sports center? These are choices. These are choices which this community and this council is making every single year. And this one in front of you today is a choice as well. Where is the money coming from? The council will have to address this today as well. And with that, I ask our management analyst, Mark Ackermann, he works in the city manager's office, to present this topic.
All right. Thank you, Hans. You took all the heat off. It's good. All right. I think we have some slides now. I'll expand on some of what Hans already mentioned. So yes, today we're going to talk about the rainbow crosswalks. We're going to have some locations for your consideration if you do approve moving forward with one. And we'll go ahead and next slide. All right. So like I said, the purpose of this presentation is to provide information on these decorative crosswalks, as well as 3 locations for consideration if they are approved. All right, some background here. So you can see decorative crosswalks have become increasingly common across the United States. Rainbow crosswalks may be viewed as a symbol of inclusivity and support for the LGBTQ plus community. And at least 10 California cities, including cities like San Diego and San Jose, Cupertino, and several others, have rainbow crosswalks, and 16 states have cities with rainbow crosswalks as well. All right, something to consider. So the 2023 edition of the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, thank you, MUTCD, approved by the Federal Highway Administration includes guidance in Section 3 that specifically addresses the aesthetic treatments in crosswalks. It's those transverse lines that they suggest it must have to be effective. Next slide. All right, so here's some examples of crosswalks that meet those guidelines. You can see the bold lines on each side, right? And then next slide. Here are some examples of crosswalks that do not meet that. So you can see there's no bold lines in the first one, the kind of rainbow spectrum. The other one's like this 3D element that obviously, I think it's obvious. It's very confusing for folks. And then the third one, this is kind of promoting some interaction with the crosswalk. We don't want folks to feel like they need to dance and play in the crosswalk. Sorry, next slide.
Thank you.
All right, so some other considerations. So there was a report from Blueberg Philanthropies that analyzed 22 sites where these crosswalks existed across 17 cities, this was asphalt art in addition to rainbow crosswalks or colorful crosswalks where they were implemented. So what their findings suggested was a 50% reduction in crashes involving pedestrians and cyclists and a 37% decrease in crashes leading to injuries after the installation of these crosswalks. Okay, so the financial considerations. So we've already talked about this a little bit. Hans mentioned it, but $2,000 to $15,000. $15,000 is more so looking at multiple crosswalks in one intersection. The $2,000 is more of a per crosswalk. This depends also on size, complexity, the choice of the materials you want to use, also the in-house versus if we're going to contract the work out. And then this will require additional maintenance compared to conventional crosswalks over time. Okay, so we have 3 requested locations here that we would love for you to look at. So we requested, or we're recommending potentially Lighthouse Avenue and Reside Avenue, Alvarado and Pearl, Pacific and Madison. And we'll go to the first one. So Lighthouse and Reside Avenues. So this was an option for us based on its proximity to the former gay bar that was it's now Pearl Hour. It used to be After Dark over on Lighthouse Avenue. There was also this brutal situation that happened in 1997 where a man was beaten savagely for simply responding in the affirmative to whether or not he was queer, quote unquote. And it gained a lot of attention in the area. And it's just something that happened right in that same vicinity. And we thought it might be something to kind of bring attention to how far we've come since then. Okay, and here you can see the image. There's a map image, and then you can kind of see the satellite image. So this is the crosswalk at that intersection that we were suggesting. All right, we'll go next one. So Alvarado and Pearl Street. So this is sort of viewed as the unofficial starting line for Monterey Peninsula Pride's annual Pride Parade. And the visibility is high here. It's also sort of the entryway, the gateway to our downtown. So a lot of visibility, and it also has this attachment to Monterey Pride. And you can see the photos here where that would be in case anyone was confused. All right, next slide. All right, and then we have Pacific and Madison Street right outside here. So this location is near the site of our annual Pride flag raising. It's actually right on the corner, so very close to it. This also may be viewed as a symbol to go along with what Hans said as sort of the local government support, our city support for inclusivity. And then also council could choose at this location, if you wanted to paint the crosswalk. We were thinking between the library and the police department across Pacific Street there, so it'd be perpendicular. And then all 4 crosswalks at the intersection may be another option if you wanted to go like a big rainbow square. All right, next slide. There you go. So here's the visual. So you can start imagining what that might look like. All right, so in summary, we just have a cost of about $2,000 to $15,000 per crosswalk or intersection, depending on what you may decide to do. Should council approve installation of one of these crosswalks, we are recommending that you adopt a resolution, authorize one or more of the locations presented. All right, I'll open it up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark, for the presentation. Open it up to council for questions. Please, Councilman Garcia.
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask about the cost. If you could share a little bit more detail in terms of what that equation looks like.
You want to chime in on it? I'll let someone smarter answer.
So the cost, the low end estimate was envisioned as being a 3-person crew for half a day and a truck. So that'd be your paint crew to do traffic control and actually paint the crosswalk 4 hours, and material costs was the low end estimate. So that's how that was calculated. High end estimate would be assuming we would be contracting out. The last time I competitively bid, Crosswalk markings, it was about $20 a square foot to have a contractor on call through a job order contract. So that calced out to about $4,000 or $5,000 per crosswalk. And so that's the high end estimate was a full intersection contracted out. So that's how those two estimates were determined.
And are we talking about temporary or permanent?
Well, that would be for the installation. So the crosswalks, like anything else up on the roadway, needs to be maintained over time. So that'd be like a one-time installation.
Mhm.
Every about 7 to 10 years, you'd probably need to refresh, probably more frequently. You need to refresh your crosswalk if we're using like paint materials. So every time you refresh it, it'd be the same cost over again.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow up on that? Or
Please,
take
please.
my turn? Why don't we know it more specifically? I mean, we've got three choices of three proposals for locations. So, I mean, are we going to use in-house staff or are we going to contract it out?
We've confirmed we can in-house it. Again, that ongoing, if we need to refresh it, that was the high-end estimate to have someone contracted out. But I've confirmed with our streets crew that we could in-house it. We have a paint truck, we have stencils. So it would, if it's approved tonight and we authorize it in the near future, our streets crew would probably be doing it. So you'd be looking at a low-end estimate.
All right.
Also, the main difference between the cost proposals or 2,000, 15,000 is the material. So if you use paint and use in-house crews, you're at about $2,000, $1,800 to $2,000. If you use thermoplastic, it costs you quite a lot more. You get also more life out of thermoplastic on the road. So paint has to be refreshed more than every 7 or 8 years, but paint has to be refreshed quite more often than that. Thermoplastic lasts quite a longer time. That's the higher cost estimate you saw provided in the agenda report.
Okay. Might as well keep going, right?
Please.
First, I wanted to thank everyone who,
Sorry.
oh, are you in the middle?
No, I'm done.
Councilmember Brash, just real quick, I just wanted to check in.
Yes,
We're sticking to questions right now. So if you had,
yes,
okay,
they're questions.
perfect.
But I want to preface
Yep.
with
Yeah,
a thank
absolutely.
you.
Please.
I just want to preface with a thank you to everyone who wrote and contacted. We've been busy for at least 30 hours about every 10 minutes. Something comes up on my screen. The comments have been eloquent and they have been, I think, very kind and thoughtful and inclusive. And I just want to thank everybody for that. I didn't get any sense of hostility toward the subjects of the topic, Pride people specifically. And there were a lot of objections about the money and the process, which is a whole different topic. And I just wanted to thank the community for that. I thought it was great. I want to thank you, Hans, for your introduction, because I think that was very helpful too. Okay. I've got a lot of questions and I'll start with the easy ones, I hope. Especially for the benefit of the community, I had a sidebar with Hans a little earlier, but where are the current decorative crosswalks and what do they look like and who paid for them?
We have quite a few decorative crosswalks. We have some on high streets. Most of them were part of NCIP. In fact, Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think in 2012 and 2014, there are also Cannery Row crosswalks, the wave pattern. So all at the rectoral crossings, we have the wave blue pattern. Those are thermoplastic. Those were also part of a NCIP project.
Okay, so the waves were an NCIP. So they went through the traditional process of evaluation by the public as to the project, as to the concept, as to the cost, and then it went through the voting night, and then it went to the council for approval. So it went through an NCIP process.
The ones that we have went through an NCIP process.
Okay, all right, thank you. The follow-up to that is an NCIP project would include taking the item to the immediate neighbors. And I would think, like, I believe the NCIP projects are proper to get support. So if somebody wanted a street light and the person who would be living right under that streetlight didn't want it, that would end it. And I'm wondering about including in any process that we talk about whether we shouldn't be considering any decorative crosswalk and to pull for 200 feet or whatever, to be determined about how people think about this. So I'm just suggesting that as an idea. I also want to know, have disability groups been consulted and their opinions solicited? As my limited research, because this just appeared 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago. Just seems like a long time now. Have disability groups been consulted and their opinions solicited? As my research revealed that the use of colors on the crosswalks can decrease crossing safety for visually impaired persons. And I'm asking for information on that. What do we know about that?
So in order to mitigate any visual challenges, I believe the MUTCD, and Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, what is required is that you have your white parallel lines, and then you have another band that creates a contrast, so a darker band, so whether it's just the asphalt, and then you have your decorative piece in the middle, so that they can see that it's still a marked crosswalk.
Okay. And this is probably more for the city attorney. And the second to the last paragraph on the proposed resolution, I honestly don't know what it means. Let it be resolved that the city hereby declares that it does not use its crosswalks to sponsor the expression of third parties. The city declares its intent that the placement of rainbow crosswalks is its own message, and the painting of such rainbow crosswalks by the city shall not function as the designation of a traditional public forum. Can you help me?
Sure. You might have noticed in a lot of the public commentary, there was discussion on free speech and what is a public forum, what isn't a public forum. And just to clarify for the public, this action, should the city council approve it, would be an expression of the city's viewpoints. It would be the city's messaging and the city's speech on government city-owned property. And so it's not opening up a public forum for everyone to have competing messages. And so similarly, if a third party wanted to fly, we'll just say a Russian flag on our flagpole, we could say, no, we're not going to allow that. And then if someone said, well, how come you're allowed to fly the progressive LGBTQ plus flag? And that's because it's the city of Monterey's position and its speech that it supports that viewpoint. So that's why that's in the resolution, just to make it absolutely clear that should the city council approve this, it's the city's message, the city's speech, and it's a permissible expression of the city's views.
So we've already kind of isolated it as its own entity. And so if our Ukrainian population said, we want to put the Ukrainian flag on a crosswalk, and let's just stipulate that most of us support Ukraine. Even though most of us support Ukraine, it would have to go through a whole process of being an expression of the city, or would they have the same right to have their artwork on public property?
So the proposed action would not open up a public forum for other competing viewpoints. It's limited to the city's expression of its own message. And so in that particular case, the city, in my view, a court would uphold the city saying, no, we don't have to allow a Ukrainian crosswalk just because the city allowed a rainbow crosswalk. Yeah.
Okay, I think you answered that question. So by deduction on that, Chrissy, this proposal would be somewhat exempt from our own crosswalk proposal that not proposal that we passed 3 days ago. We passed the crosswalk proposal, which includes direction and guidance on decorative crosswalks. So one of these is that the colors should be muted. And so if we're going to be looking at the pride colors, which are very vibrant, the only one included in our own crosswalk policy is red. We allow red and rust and brown and burgundy and clay and tan or similar earth tones. So we have an exception right out of the gate, or really what I'm getting to is maybe we've already exempted it.
Maybe I'll have engineering staff answer this, but my understanding and in the resolution is included that it's consistent with the policy that was just adopted by the council a couple of days ago. And so the crosswalk that would be painted, I'm presuming would be consistent with that, but maybe Andrea or Andrew can elaborate further. Thank you.
So in a policy, we do state what FHWA guidance is, but our own crosswalks with the waves, they have the different colors. So what FHWA and essentially MUTCD don't want is that you have one advertisement in a crosswalk. That's not applicable. You don't want somebody to be driving. You don't want words and things that somebody's going to stop and read them. You also don't want conflicting messages. So for example, if they're just yellow and it's a one-way street and it looks like a center line, it's just these conflicting messages that would create unsafe situations. So these are just the guidance. And again, we do exercise engineering judgment to ensure that something is not complex or confusing, or that there's adverse advertising and letters and different things to confuse the public when they're driving.
Mm-hmm.
So it is consistent with the policy.
Well, in our own policy, we also say that we shouldn't use yellow. That we shouldn't use yellow within the decorative art.
So one thing is that if you do look at the MUTCD, we have very specific shades of color. So we would not use the same shade of color yellow. So it doesn't stop the use of yellow, but it's a very specific shade of yellow, just like we have a very specific shade of red, blue, and green that we use in all of our signs. And all of these color patterns are available on the Federal Highway Administration's website. And it has both what the like RGB or CMYK or Pantone color is associated with these very specific colors for signs and markings.
Okay. And again, our own crosswalk policy says their use should be carefully considered. The cost of maintenance may need to be borne by the local business district, neighborhood association, or other body. A maintenance agreement will be required as a condition of approval. Location for any decorative crosswalk must meet the requirements of this policy. A request for a decorative crosswalk must be made by an organization such as a business district or a neighborhood association that would be responsible for the cost of implementation and maintenance. So, I'm confused because we passed this and then we're jumping to an exception. I mean, I'm not hearing that an organization has asked for this. I'm not hearing that there's a maintenance understanding. So it's confusing to me that we just went through this 3 days ago and now we aren't following it.
That's not my understanding, but again, I'll defer it to Ms. Rennie.
Thank you.
If the city wanted to install a decorative crosswalk or worked with Cannery Row to install a decorative crosswalk, I think that it's not a policy that's meant to create. I'm going to say it's not an exception if the city wants to go ahead and work with an organization to do so for any other reasons. And we've worked with Cannery Row Company in the past with the wave crosswalks.
Mhm.
So I'm just pointing that out that we want to rely as much as we can on outside sources of funding, but nothing in that policy precludes
Yeah, let me just say it.
what we're discussing today.
Another way to phrase it is this is the city's property, so the city can put a decorative crosswalk wherever it would like.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be generated by a business organization or third party.
Okay. Let me see if I have any other questions. I think that's that is it. Thank you.
Okay. Please, Councilor Smith.
Yeah, I want to go back and continue some of what Mrs. Rash was just talking about in our previous policy from last week. And I'm referring to item 20. If somebody wants to look this up, last week, we adopted the City of Monterey's crosswalk policy in the packet. And there's the first thing I want to talk about is the alternatives considered, and the City Council's representation from staff was the City Council could choose not to adopt a crosswalk policy. However, this is not recommended because it would leave the city ill-equipped to respond to requests for new crosswalks or crosswalk enhancements. So my question is, have we had specific requests for crosswalk art, decorative in the last 6 months? And if that's so, what group has that come from? And was this a specific request by, let me refer to it because I want to get it right. The report that was sent on this package for today on crosswork included a draft resolution and a CC to the Monterey Peninsula Pride, info@peninsulapride.org. So was that organization communicating with the city in any manner, way, or form in the last year reference to trying to do some striping of crosswalks? So two-part question. Any other requests? And was there specific requests or communications from the Gay Pride organization?
So there are no any other requests, and there was no request from Monterey Gay Pride to the city of Monterey.
Okay. And then I want to go back to the sidewalk agenda item, and also under the special scenarios. I too am a little confused in terms of how this works. Now, this is a new resolution we just passed, so I've read it about 20 times. So now I'm really trying to figure this out. And it says the policy is intended to guide city staff in the design process of city projects, but the policy may not incorporate all factors that may be relevant to a specific project or pedestrian safety issues in the city. I get that. The policy is not intended to be overly rigid, and final implementation of these guidelines will involve engineering judgment, and engineering and public works indicated that all design decisions will be made by an engineer or an individual under the supervision of an engineer who has the appropriate levels of experience and expertise to make the traffic control device decision. So how do we discern when a request comes to the city whether or not it's appropriate or not? And does that then mean that we could open the floodgates to multiple requests would that go to the city council for approval, or would that stay within the engineering staff for their approval at staff level? Yeah, I guess that question would be to staff.
I think I tried to take a stab at it. Number one is it's clear that the policy that you passed on Tuesday requires a review by certified personnel, engineering, traffic engineering staff that knows whether a crosswalk in the middle of a block makes sense or somewhere else. So that's part number one, that crosswalks that are many times asked by residents are being evaluated based on sound engineering expertise, as well as best practices and the regulations. Number two is, if an organization would like to approach the city with a crosswalk, my understanding is that the city can pick this up, or can basically say, no, we are not really interested to support a crosswalk for this particular organization. That's why, as Councilman Marash conversed with the city attorney, that's why the city puts those clauses in the resolution to ensure that the city does not have to paint a Russian crosswalk somewhere in the city. So I think that hopefully answers the question.
And one other question on today's agenda item. I see there was just one CC that was sent to the group I've already mentioned, but it doesn't look like it was sent to the Old Monterey Business Association, Lighthouse Business District, or any of the other locations where there could be proposed crosswalk decorations. Did city staff exclude them for a reason, or why were they not included?
My best guess is that's an oversight.
Okay. That's the only questions I have, Mayor.
Let's take it out for public comment. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to check with folks on Zoom to use the raise hand function. And then while folks are navigating their way to the raise hand function on Zoom, I will check in the chamber. So I'm going to ask, if you want to speak on this item, to stand to the left of the podium. And if you want to remain seated or need to remain seated, just identify yourself by raising your hand. But don't raise your hand right now. Just wait till everybody stands, and then I'll do another check-in. So you don't have to keep your hand up. All right. Does anybody else want to speak on this in the chamber? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody else that's sitting that wants to speak? So, okay. How can I do this to make this easy? Because I'm not going to remember all these faces. I'm going to do one more check-in, and if staff, you can help me just identify these folks to make sure. So one more time, raise your hand if you're still seating and you want to speak on this one. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got the 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got them? Are we good?
Yeah.
All right. And standing, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So we have 27 folks in the chamber. We have how many? Let me do the countdown on Zoom. Do a countdown to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There are 10 hands raised on
There's
Zoom.
10 hands raised on Zoom. 12. Okay, we have the 12. We're going to go ahead and cut it off there with the 12. You don't need to have your hand raised. You're good. You can't. I'm sorry. Just for procedurally, if I allow you to say something, I have to allow that for everybody else. So I just want to be respectful of everybody in the room and online. So on our agenda, and let's make sure I'm articulating this correctly. We've allocated 30 minutes for public comment on this. We do have some other business to get to today, so I just want to be mindful of that. How does the council feel with a minute and a half for public comment?
2 minutes. I don't think they're happy.
Let's wait for Ed to come back to give some insight there. And I want to make sure he hears all the public comment as well.
We just go into our closed session.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine.
Yeah, no,
Question is 1.5 or 2 minutes.
yes, sir.
And we came up with 48,
Yeah, we've
49.
allocated 30 minutes for public comment. So I think a minute and a half is generous, but
I favor 2 because it is important for the community to be heard.
all right, let's do 2 minutes. And we'll go ahead and start in the chamber.
All right, my name is Alan Bienenfeld, and I talked to several of my gay friends. They don't want anything to do with advertising what they feel sexually. It has nothing to do with them. I know you want to make a statement out of the city. There is a solution. You had all those sketches of different types of crosswalks. There was one in there that was made with, it looked like it was 3D. That was done in Europe to slow down cars. And it could be an interesting thing here. But the real solution for this town is just like you see over by Robert Down. You have a stop sign, you have a basket of flags, and you take the flag across the street, you put it in the other side after you cross safely. You could get rainbow flags, you could get BLM flags, you could get any of the crap that's going around, and you'd be able to walk across the street in the mode that you felt most comfortable. And if there's any extra time, I want to give it to Shar.
Everybody gets 2 minutes.
So okay. My name is Charlene Carter. I've lived here for 42 years, and I'm here to express my strong and unwavering opposition to the installation of any rainbow painted crosswalks on our Monterey city streets. And by the way, Pacific Justice Institute lead counsel called me today to tell me that the California Code, Vehicle Code Section 21362, you would be violating. I don't know if I haven't even heard anybody saying anything about this, but number one, crosswalks are yellow by schools. All the rest of them are white. Number two, if you deface a crosswalk, you're liable. All right. We object to any defacing of public property, our public property, for the purpose of promoting personal identity, lifestyle, or ideology of any kind. City streets and traffic control elements are public assets, are maintained for public safety, not repurposed for canvases for social or political messaging. This proposal is not rooted in any transportation need, safety improvement, or neutral beautification effort. It is a symbolic gesture meant to celebrate a specific group. We believe firmly that taxpayer-funded infrastructure dollars should never be used for the symbolic expression of any person's lifestyle, belief, or sexual identity. The mayor is not a bystander in this matter. He is a direct beneficiary of the public messaging he is pushing to install thousands of dollars of our taxpayer resources, as we're seeing on KSBW last night. Thank you. Happy Memorial Day.
I could walk without this, then I have my arms way out and you'll be a lot more concerned. I'm Nadine Anderson. I have lived here for about 2.5 years, but my sister has lived here for 50 something. So I've been visiting the place for a long time. I think having something that tells a group that has been considered unacceptable, that we're okay with you here, would be a very good thing. It's not that it would be saying they're in some way more acceptable than other people. It's just saying, hey, we don't think it's that people making their own choices is a bad thing, so long as you're observing the law and being nice to people. So this is, in my view, a good way of being nice to people that have not had acceptance in the past. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
My name is Rena Tringali. I was born and raised in this peninsula. I've lived here my whole life. I'm 64 years old. I was born and raised in a gay household. I have nothing against any gay people. I have an office several blocks away, and there's been construction going on in front of my office building for at least every week since October. The years I've been listening to a jackhammer. If you have extra money in the city, can't you finish the construction so that when the summer comes, our tourists can at least go through downtown? I have nothing against the gay community, but I think this is a waste of money, especially when I listen to this infrastructure costs and grants. You're trying to get money to make our streets more safe. I don't believe spending money on rainbow crosswalks that need to be maintained and refurbished is going to enhance our traffic safety. I am firmly against it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, City Council. I'm Peter Kaiser, about a 55-year resident of the peninsula. And
Excuse me, Peter, you'll have to speak up and right into the microphone. Those at home won't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Speak,
So
please.
Peter Kaiser, 55-year resident of the Monterey Peninsula. And on these rainbow crosswalks, I think we have to be very careful. There is a problem of promoting personal priorities or personal lifestyles on our city crosswalks. And we don't want city money. This would be cost, if you have three crossing walks at 15,000 each, it could be almost $45,000. And this would be anti-traditional family, and it would be anti-marriage between a man and a woman, which we even had in our Constitution previously, voted by 62% of the voters, Proposition 8. So this is an affront to them. And we also want to make sure that what's called Fidelity Month is a much preferable way to deal with this whole situation. It's respect for God, traditional family, and it's and honoring the Bible and Christian worldview. So we have to be careful about having this on our sidewalks, and it could discourage some people from even coming to a city, which is going to discourage traditional family. So, and unnatural relations that violate the Holy Bible. Thank you. So I disapprove of this rainbow crosswalk.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council. Luis Osorio. So this country has had a long history of painful discrimination and lack of recognition for a lot of groups. However, we have evolved to a point where a lot of that doesn't happen the way it used to anymore. However, people are still discriminated upon for so many reasons. There are laws established, that include ways to recognize groups and to not discriminate. There's the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We all abide by, I suppose, or will hope. So thinking critically, which we're all supposed to be doing, the question is this necessary to provide added recognition to a group that has been historically discriminated? Is this necessary? Are you going to use the street to recognize people, the street surface? Then the follow-up question is, what about other groups? What about Native Americans? What about Hispanic people that have been historically discriminated in the peninsula and we all know about? So we end up, using the street surface to recognize people. We're going to end up with a hush-push of street crossings that is going to deter from the objective of the use of the streets. So, I'm not opposed. I'm not against it. I'm not for it. I'm neutral. We need to think critically as a community on whether this is a necessary tool to not discriminate or to add added recognition to this group. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. My name is Tina Rao. I don't think this is about a $15,000 expenditure on a $100 million budget. I think it's about hate and fear versus love and courage. We know that queer youths are more likely to be abused in the home. They're more likely to be bullied in school. They're more likely to be homeless, to self-harm, or attempt suicide. To some, a crosswalk might seem like a minuscule thing, but to a person who's being abused, who's homeless, who's bullied, or having thoughts of suicide, it's a symbol that it gets better. It says you're welcome here. We are a safe space. It tells residents, the people who work here, and the visitors that come that this is an accepting and inclusive city. I would also say that this crosswalk is an important safety tool. If it protects one kiddo from contemplating suicide, isn't that a small price to pay? I suspect if we raised the money, there would be some other red herring that would get thrown out as another roadblock. In these times where the federal government is marching towards authoritarianism, you have the opportunity to say that hate won't stand here. So it is about hate and fear, but you have the choice to choose love and courage to make a stand for those who can't stand for themselves. And we owe it to all of our queer kids to choose love and courage. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Megan Yeoman, and I think at a time when there is so much vitriol and hatred coming at us, it is heartwarming to learn that Monterey is considering a rainbow crosswalk that symbolizes welcome, acceptance, and safety to people who are far too often thrown aside as somehow less than and unacceptable by people who think their judgment is righteous and sanctioned. As a grandmother of a trans child, I can tell you that worry for their safety and the mere fact that they exist, perfect children of God, should not be anybody's business but their own. This symbol of love and acceptance will go a long, long way in communicating that Monterey is a loving and accepting place whose leaders will fight for the rights of every citizen to exist in safety and peace. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Epperson. I am a resident of Monterey County. A rainbow might seem frivolous to those who have never had to live in darkness, to those who have never had to question their safety to walk down the street, the safety to hold their partner's hand in public or use the restroom. For people who have had to live lives full of fears, a rainbow is not frivolous. It is not a splashy political statement. It is a beacon, a sign that you are safe here, that you are welcome here, that you are wanted here. Love is not political. Acceptance is not political. Human rights and common decency should not be political. When we take steps to make society and our city safer for marginalized communities, we make our city safer for everyone. And we teach our children that they are loved, that they don't have to fear who they are, where they live, or their neighbors, that their community will love and accept them for who they are. And it will tell everyone around the world that they too are safe here, that Monterey is a safe place for everyone.
Hi there, I'm Kate Daniels, your 5th District Monterey County Supervisor, and I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to be here today. And I want to start by thanking Hans for clarifying the genesis of this resolution, especially at a time when elected officials feel very much under attack for simply believing in things like equity and justice and speaking up on behalf of equality. So thank you for that clarification, so there's no unintended consequences. You clearly have some policies to work out in terms of how you do this, but I really want, in terms of the public comment that I've heard so far, to mention safety, because I think this is public safety, especially at a time when so many people in our communities do not feel safe. And I feel like this is an opportunity for you as a city to send a clear, brightly colored message to everyone who comes, who lives here and works here and visits here, that this is a place where everyone is welcome. This is a place where our LGBTQ plus community is seen, that this is a place where our LGBTQ plus community can be out and about safely, and that our LGBTQ plus community has the same rights as everybody else at a time when in our country that is unclear. That is not obvious. This is an opportunity for Monterey, for the city of Monterey, to make our love and acceptance be obvious to everyone. So just like a pothole needs to be fixed on a road, we need to fix the intolerance and the hate that is prevalent in this nation. And you have an opportunity to be on the forefront of that type of messaging and clarity about us being a welcoming community and a welcoming county. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. I'm here to express why the decision before us, the vote on whether to install a rainbow crosswalk, is more than a matter of paint on pavement. It's about visibility, inclusion, and the kind of community we want to be. A no vote sends a message of exclusion to members of the LGBTQ plus community, and a no vote can feel like rejection. The rainbow is a symbol of pride, resilience, and belonging. Saying no to this symbol may unintentionally send the message that LGBTQ plus individuals are not welcome, or at least not recognized here. That matters because representation matters. Visibility matters. And when people don't see themselves reflected in their own town, they can feel invisible. It reflects on who we are as a community. People pay attention to the symbols we embrace. Visitors, businesses, and future residents look at how we treat our most visible, vulnerable, and marginalized. A rainbow crosswalk might seem like small ways, but we see you and you belong here are huge words to welcome individuals. Conversely, a no vote may suggest our community isn't ready to stand publicly for inclusion, and that can affect how we perceive far beyond this. When each of you ran for city politics, you made a promise to represent all of the constituents in your communities and districts. That includes people of background, every faith, every orientation, and every identity. But when it comes time to vote on something as symbolic and affirming as a Rainbow Pride crosswalk, and you vote against it, What does that truly say to the constituents and the community? It says, I'll represent you, but only to a point. You'll be part of this community, but maybe not be visible. And that message, that has a real impact. It impacts how safe people feel and how welcome and seen.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Rick Hoyer, the president of the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. Earlier this week, you had a lot of discussions about all the different taxes you're looking at raising and all the different fees and things because the infrastructure is crumbling. Basically, the city doesn't have the money it needs to do the key things it needs. Yet, over the last several weeks, we've looked at increasing council salaries. And now we've got this proposal, which doesn't even have a budget in it coming to you. It should have had a proposal for an amount of funds. We don't have a position either way on the sidewalks. I think there's actually our position is you should be spending your time looking at how you're going to be cutting the budget to deal with all the infrastructure needs you have, not adding a new cost, which will have future costs in the future as well. I think there's a third option here. It's being painted as being black and white. Yes or no. You're going to either allow the crosswalk or not. Our issue is who pays for the crosswalk. You could say, yes, the crosswalk would be great, and those we actively support it. Now let's go out and actively raise the funds from the public to do it and to maintain it in the long term. You're making the statement of support, but at the same time recognizing that the city is, for all intents and purposes, broke. It can't fix all the facilities that it has. And you're looking and wanting to go to the public to raise taxes. You need to show that, especially if you go for a general tax, it's not just going to go for all kinds of other things and not what the intention was, which is fixing all the facilities that are falling apart. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Melissa. I'm a Monterey resident and proud member of the LGBTQ community. I want to quickly address something mentioned in recent opposition just before I go further. Being LGBT is not an ideology. It's not a trend or a lifestyle or a political stance. It's an identity. The language that we use matters. When I first moved here 4 years ago, I did what many queer people do in a new place. I Googled gay Monterey because I didn't know where to go to find community. And that search led me to Monterey Peninsula Pride, who organizes our annual parade and celebration, and eventually to finding my people. At every Pride celebration, we hear the same thing. I had no idea this community was this big. And that's because we're here, but we're not visible. And that's what this rainbow crosswalk is about. It's a simple gesture with a powerful message for residents, visitors, and young people still finding their way, that you belong here. Monterey doesn't have an LGBT center. Our Pride organization is entirely volunteer run. So for the city to help make our community visible every day of the year would mean a lot. And in less than 24 hours, the Monterey Peninsula Pride Board has rallied to pass a resolution to help partially fund this crosswalk, up to $1,000 for a temporary and $3,000 for a permanent. And that's how much this means to us and how committed we are to partnering with you all to make this happen. This moment isn't just for queer folks, it's for allies too. In a time when LGBT people are under attack across this country, visibility and action matter. If you've wondered how to be an ally, this is how. So let's take this opportunity to adopt this resolution and show everyone what we already know. The LGBTQ community has been an important part of our history. They're an important part of today. This is a moment to align with our city's values. Thank you.
Okay, Kathy Anderson, you know, it's very heart-wrenching to hear all these comments. And I think this is something we're going to be dealing with for the rest of our lives, because look who's running our country. And we're separated here again. And that's what's disheartening. Folks don't have the money to repair what you have. We've got kids that are sleeping on couches and they're not going to have their funds for food. Summertime, because it's summertime. I just saw somebody sleeping on the sidewalk. Let's prioritize. Let's fix what we have and what's been much needed for so long here and not let's get separated. And it's really disheartening that I was afraid to come myself. So here I am, Italian white woman coming up here. And I'm afraid to come up here too, thinking who's going to, not like me anymore. This is not necessary.
it shouldn't be on someone's agenda. There's other groups that are going to want to come in, and it's just one big hoorah. I'm so sorry, and I hope a perfect world will arrive soon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is PK Diffenbaugh, Superintendent, Monterey Peninsula Unified. According to a 2024 report by the CDC, 41% of LGBTQ youth have considered suicide in the past year. And according to the Trevor Project, 1 in 10 have actually attempted suicide. At Marina High, at the urging of our students, we put in a crosswalk with pride colors. And I was shocked at how important it was to our kids. So many students came up to me expressing their support and thanking me for allowing them to paint the crosswalk. It may have cost us a few $1,000s, and it cost us a few thousand to upkeep it, but I can tell you it's worth every penny. You can't put a price on the safety and belonging and inclusion of our students who have been historically marginalized and discriminated against and made to feel as they are not part of the community. Communicating to our students, 1 in 10 who may have attempted suicide, that Monterey is a city that welcomes them, is literally priceless. Now, you can put it anywhere, and I'll support it anywhere, but I will ask that it goes on Alvarado Street, because that's where our students spend most of their time. That's where Monterey High students get off the bus and walk up to school. And it will show them again that we are a community that cares for them, that we are a community that believes in them, and that we are a community that has their back, that they should not have to suffer what so many students across our country have. I thank you for your time. I ask for your support for this important endeavor. Thank you.
Wow. Rick Aldinger speaking today as a resident of Monterey. It's a difficult conversation we're having today. And some recent comments notwithstanding, I truly believe and see Monterey as a welcoming and inclusive community. And I think that's important to all of us. Clearly, there seem to be some policy details and formalities that need to be worked out here. I'm listening to today's conversation. I'm a little bit confused about the whole thing. And my concern, one of my biggest concerns, is really about what I'm seeing as an equity and inclusion issue. If I got this right, what I heard was that the city is under no obligation to consider any other group or ethnic group or cultural group, marginalized, disadvantaged part of our community to have equal representation here. And if that's true, that is concerning to me. Unless we do that, there's an equity issue. And if we then take it that next step, now I'm concerned about the finances of it. Where does this stop? Where, who makes these decisions? Where does that line get drawn? We're going to include these people, but we're not going to include these people. And that is my concern about this, that, in trying to do something that we feel good about and we think is the right thing to do, may be heading us in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Taylor Merritt. I am a member of the queer community here in Monterey. I live and work here. I have for a long time, 4 generations of family here. I too have found my people here. There is a vibrant queer community here, which is amazing. But I would echo some of the previous points that we're not seen. And there's a lot of kids here. We have a lot of families. And the points about it being really important to show support for kids and everyone, but especially the kids. Those statistics are not just statistics, they're lives, you know? And that matters. And it might not seem like a big thing, like what's it going to do to see a rainbow on the ground, right? But that really does make a big difference. And as part of the queer community, I feel like when I go to a new city or something and I see that, a little piece of me inside is like, oh, you know, I just feel a little bit safer, even though we know there's people who are hateful all over the place, right? And I might not physically be safe in that moment, but I feel more comfortable knowing that a city has done this in support of this community. And I would also point out that there are lots of groups that may want to do something, as other points have been made, but the queer community is big, right? There are people from all different identities within the queer community. So it's a little broader than, oh, now every other little group is going to want to do this. I think it aligns well with our city values that have been stated, and I would urge you to approve.
Hi, everybody. There's been a lot of points raised today, kind of from all over the spectrum, no pun intended. Some I've heard is money, safety, and then somewhat of the idea that if we open the door for this, it's going to become a hodgepodge of ideas for people to be able to represent themselves however they want, backed by the government, and also a reflection of values. I think first with money, I think that is something that we can either, if we don't find creatively, there's parts of the budget, the 1% of budget that's dedicated for art, right, with building. This seems pretty relevant to that. Safety, I think this is a huge matter of safety. I mean, we just had a presentation about how maybe the standards for crosswalks that we have been using haven't been working. So why not try to problem solve creatively? The hodgepodge, I think, as I think two gentlemen ago just said, I think that's a beautiful thing. I welcome the hodgepodge. Let's have more voices included. Let's have the conversation more about what we need to represent as a city. I think that's only going to make us stronger. I think it gives us an opportunity to create historical and cultural and community building, to honor people and monuments that have defined the community and created recognition for space in the public realm. I think that using locations that have such a cultural significance allows us to serve as role models for the future, for the younger generations, in the way that we're noting our mistakes and showing them that we can reconcile them by honoring a legacy. And that we've created a space where it's safe to mourn, safe to reconcile, safe to express yourself, and safe to be a part of the community. So I think top argument, safety, it's still safe. And secondly, let's bring people together. And obviously this is a big issue that brings a lot of people together and brings a healthy conversation to the environment. So let's keep that conversation going, and hopefully we can end in a beautiful sidewalk. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gabe. I'm a resident of the city here. I work here. I've lived here for 3 years. I lived in a city called Sacramento before that. There's a really big rainbow crosswalk there, and I felt really safe crossing it. And in fact, I've never felt safer in a city than where I see a rainbow crosswalk, because I know I don't have to worry about my friends. I know that they're welcome there. And if you're talking about public safety, this is a really small price to pay to know that your friends are safe and that your community members are safe. So whether it's 2,000, 15,000 per intersection, double that. The community should come together around it. We voted for you. This is your opportunity to manifest that vote, represent your community, represent the safety of everyone in it. Because that rainbow is not just for one group of people, it's for everybody to feel safe. And I think if you have a chance to spend a little bit of money on that, as Superintendent Diffenbaugh illustrated, it can go a really long way for people who have otherwise felt underrepresented, unrecognized, and invisible for a very long time. So, and if it comes to recognizing other communities who've been underrepresented, discriminated against, yeah, maybe we should consider giving them representation. City of Sacramento's GDP has gone up by around 30% each year give or take a few percentage points. I'm not worried about economics. And if your business isn't interested in LGBTQ business, maybe that's not your business. These are our friends. These are our teachers. These are your kids. And I'd urge you to reconsider your priorities if you don't want them to feel safe. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mandy Owen. I'm a proud resident and taxpayer and homeowner in the city of Monterey. I'm also a proud non-binary married queer person in our city. I agree deeply with all of the points that have been made so far in favor of having the crosswalk. And I want to underline some points about safety, as well as add a few other points of perspective around community engagement and overall happiness, as well as safety. In Vancouver, British Columbia, a study by Happy City found that visitors reported feeling 40% happier at a rainbow-painted intersection compared to a standard one nearby. They were also 60% more likely to want to meet friends there, suggesting that such installations can enhance sentiment about public safety. The Rainbow 6 crosswalk in the Ximending district of Taipei has become a popular Instagram spot, featured in travel expos and promoting LGBTQ+ tourism. Similarly, in Phoenix, Arizona, city officials refurbished a rainbow crosswalk ahead of Pride Month festivities to signal the city's support for LGBTQ+ community in and beyond Phoenix, with the hopes of attracting visitors, new residents, and new businesses. So to sum up, this installation would enhance the cultural vibrancy of Monterey, promote inclusivity, safety, and would become a visitor attraction in its own right to folks from all over California and the world. And it's just so colorful and joyful. Like, what is there to argue? Thanks for your time.
Hi, my name is Carol Sasso. I think most everything has been covered here, but I'm going to just briefly tell you what my concerns are. It's the same one that another gentleman mentioned earlier. It has to do with funds. I have down here on my notes fundraising with a question mark. Is it possible to fundraise for this particular project? And that's just one thing. I also noticed, I looked up thermoplastic. I think it's called thermoplastic, which is the paint. And I was told that you have to paint it every 2 to 3 years. So I'm more of a budget-minded person. And if you have to paint it every 2 or 3 years, that's a problem. So maybe recheck. He's not here now, but when he was here, you might want to double check that. That was just my information. Some of the crosswalks that, well, let me tell you another one
You have one more minute.
Oh, I have one more. Oh, good. Thank you. The other thing is that at one time, these crosswalks were banned because of they were dangerous, because people were looking at them rather than driving or not walking, or they couldn't see. Okay, so they're not now, but they were. And some of the crosswalks have rapid. My favorite one is the crosswalk that has rapid flashing beacons that you just put on Hartnell. I wish you put it on the other corner, going the other way across Webster, because I've almost been hit twice. So I wanted to get that in. And I also, now it's over.
No, you keep going.
Oh, I get more. Oh, good. Okay, goody. I don't like to talk in public. Am I over?
Why don't you take 2 more seconds?
Okay.
Kind of
Raised crosswalks, and there's also beacon-like types of things that you can use. There's also signs that you can put in the crosswalk. There's hawk beacons. Okay.
Yeah. And feel free, by the way, if anybody has any additional comments beyond, and I apologize for the confusion with the timing there, feel free to send them in, because we would love to check them out.
Ooh, nervous. Thank you to the City Council, and thank you to the city staff for your diligent work on this project. I'm here to voice my support for the installation of the Rainbow Crosswalk. How incredible that we have the opportunity to embrace existing values of the City of Monterey, promote safety as displayed by the data in the presentation, and have the rippling effect of sending a message of inclusion and belonging to the LGBTQ plus residents and visitors. I thank you for listening to the voices of diverse folks willing to put themselves forward in favor of the crosswalk. At a time like this, it can be scary to identify as queer or even as an ally. As a representative of Monterey Peninsula Pride, we only recently became aware of this project, just like all the folks in this room. We would be honored to participate in the fundraising to make this special project possible and bring our city's values to life. And as a private citizen, if at any time there is a proposal for a decorative crosswalk to celebrate the Two-Spirit and Indigenous community with this city, our history, in this building, on Indigenous land, I will be in line to support that project too.
Mayor Council Nelson Vega. I think you guys have brought something here that you're probably going to regret. This is something that should have been thought through, should have been reached out to the community, because certainly you've brought up something up that is going to make it very divisive for a lot of people. And you really need to step back and understand there's going to be a place, a common ground. You got to find something in the middle that says, hey, maybe not the crosswalk where everybody has to go. Maybe a special part of Colton Hall. Maybe a special part of one park. There are solutions to this, because certainly I have a lot of friends of mine who are gay. I have a lot of friends that are anti-gay. I have a lot of friends. It's a very divisive issue. And you've brought it upon here without outreach in a 2-hour meeting, on a special meeting, on a weekend. Please table this. Take it back. Think it through. There are other solutions to support this community. Thank you.
I'm Tom Casas. I'm a resident of City of Monterey and a property owner of apartments and houses. And I want to give you a perspective from that angle. And I want to kind of get you on to the other side of the street, you might say, but bear with me. So started with the rental registry, and there was a process though. And I didn't agree with the registry, but I saw a process and it passed. So I put my units on the rental registry, and but I could live with it because there was a vetted process. After that, there was a bill that came to me, said, you are now required to have business licenses for these apartments. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, I needed a business license. So again, at some point, there was a process that said business licenses are required for apartments. Okay, great. Paying that. And then less than a week ago, I got a letter from the city that said, not only do you need to pay for your business license, but we're going to go back 4 years and charge you for those licenses and charge you a 50% penalty on top of that. That stung. Now, I'm telling you all of this because this morning I got up and I saw the city was going to paint sidewalks. My view was the city needed money. The city, I think someone else said it, is broke. Can't support its current infrastructure. Going to people like me with new fees, and I'm okay with it, but I expect those fees to be used properly, I would say, to support our current infrastructure, not to create more infrastructure to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert McKay from Monterey. Lived here most of my life. Worked public safety here and other state, federal. And the concept is good. I've driven fire engines, ambulances. I think it's a distraction it's going to be a distraction to drivers, distraction to pedestrians to see this. The concept is good, but not the place for it. Bixby Bridge, great place. People are lining up and blocking traffic, taking pictures of it. I see this possibly being an issue. I just think it's a safety issue for pedestrians and the collisions. I've been on these collisions. I've seen the pedestrians that don't even look. Kindergarten, you learn to look both ways before you cross a street. People just walk out in front of you. They're going to be looking at this. I think it's just a distraction to drivers and pedestrians. And I think maybe let's do it somewhere else, but not on our streets. When you think there's only I don't remember, 20 places in the United States that are doing it, or maybe more, but it's this many people, this many crosswalks. And I think it's just going to be a hazard for us. Thanks a lot.
Good afternoon, everybody. Esther Malkin. Somebody mentioned earlier, I think it might have been Kate, that, throughout history, this country has had all kinds of civil rights issues. And we've always tried to move forward, whether it was, civil rights, women's rights, farm worker rights. Now we have the unhoused people that need rights. We've always been about protecting people's rights. And all of a sudden, in the current political climate, we're going backwards. It took us centuries to get here, and now the people that are in other parts of our government are trying to take us backwards. This city needs to move forward. We've had a lot of the same people come out, and we've heard a lot of similar voices when it was the rental registry, because renters weren't being acknowledged. Just because the same voices turn up over and over and over, it doesn't mean that that's the direction the city needs to keep going. Of course, they're going to fight it because they're used to having it their way, but the city has to grow with the times. I personally had an issue with the previous leadership of this city when around the holidays, they wouldn't put up a menorah. Our surrounding neighbors put up a menorah along with their Christmas decorations. The national menorah in Washington, D.C. is gigantic. I don't understand why there is this need for the people who have lived here a long time not to want to welcome newer people and move this city and the country forward instead of backwards. So whether it's a crosswalk or whether it's, religion or whatever it is, we need to keep moving Monterey forward, even if the national trend in DC is to take us backwards in time. We need to do better here.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for your infinite patience. I always tell Tyler I could never do this part. I'm Luca Oak. I've lived and studied in Monterey off and on for the better part of 20 years. I love this peninsula with all my heart. I have experienced homophobia here. I have been discriminated against and attacked for being queer. I know other people in this chamber at this moment who have also experienced discrimination and oppression here. It has affected our mental well-being, our physical well-being, our livelihoods. We may believe that we are in a progressive bubble. That is not a reality that many of us have lived. The rainbow symbol is not a representation of a lifestyle. It is a call for unity. It is a call for not just equality, but for celebration of all of who we are. I would love to see that visible on the streets of Monterey. Now, I too have concerns about cost. I live up at the top of Skyline. Jean, thank you for representing. And the potholes on Jefferson are getting on my nerves. One got fixed and then it just reappeared again. I would love to see those infrastructure needs taken care of. I'm also on the Monterey Peninsula Pride Board. And as we have said twice, and I will now say a third time, We are here to contribute to this, not just to ask for it, but to also participate so that the city can also take care of the other needs that exist. So I would ask that the city please consider approving this and then allow us to be your partners in this. Thank you.
Were there any other folks that were sitting that raised their hand that we didn't get yet? All right, so we got everybody in the chamber. We're going to go ahead and take it to our callers on Zoom.
Apologize for most likely mispronouncing. Shinyuri, I'll go ahead and allow you to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So my name is Chinerio Bona. I am a resident of New Monterey. I also serve as a rep for the NCIP and NCIP chair. I am speaking on behalf of myself. I am in support of this project, and I can also understand how the timing of the proposal is challenging, given the discussions that have been had regarding current needs for funds related to infrastructure, new public safety building, wharf repair, maintenance, et cetera. It was pointed out that the city will need to make difficult decisions regarding spending, and it's also been said multiple times that Monterey has a spending problem. I would love to see more public art, and I actually see NCIP as being a funding source for that. We have a project for murals under the Casa Verde Highway 1 underpass. I'd love to see more art incorporated into the path of history. I think NCIP can be a way of seeing more public art. NCIP has been criticized by the city manager for ongoing maintenance regarding NCIP projects, and that coming from the general fund. I think this can open up a conversation related to restructuring NCIP so that it can pay for ongoing maintenance for NCIP projects only. My hope is that NCIP is seen as an asset and not a bureaucratic burden. And then lastly, if the council does decide to move forward, I think one location may be easier to balance in regards to the budget. I agree that Alvarado makes the most sense. I think maybe considering the less permanent option in it initially, and maybe again, like I said, recircling back to NCIP for funding. Thank you.
Gary Curcio.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, council members, Gary Curcio. This afternoon, I'm speaking to you as a private citizen. First off, I am not at all against this concept. However, I am against the funding method or the proposed funding method. This is an abuse of taxpayer money. How can this council justify a non-budgeted expense when the city's infrastructure is in deep needs of upgrading and replacements? Again, I am not opposed to this concept, but it should be funded with private dollars, and it wouldn't be that difficult to do. So my suggestion is to table this item, get some input from business people and other people in your community that are stepping up all the time. And if you pass this, it's a very dangerous and slippery slope and a bad precedent. So table it and let's see if there's a better way to get it done. Thank you.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My main concern is about the process that you're following here. You're associating a specific group of the population, the LGBTQ population, with what really should be a discussion about a process to approve painted crosswalks. I'm not opposed to the idea. As other speakers have said, I'm concerned about who's going to pay for it, both in terms of the initial cost and the maintenance of it. And going down the list of segments of society that have high suicide rates, the largest suicide rate amongst Americans are Native Americans. And we literally walk upon their bones when you go down the recreation trail. So it seems to me kind of galling that we here are talking about one segment of society, and we should be considering all segments of society that have been discriminated against and harmed. So I think you need to have a process to consider all groups that have had difficulties in this country, in the world, to express their presence. I think that a solidly painted crosswalk is going to cost more than a conventional crosswalk because of just the sheer square footage of it. I think if a group wants to support a crosswalk, that's great. But what about the groups that can't afford it? Does that mean that you're going to say, sorry, if you don't come to us with a bucket of money, you're not going to get your crosswalk? This is why I'm saying you really need I think you should table this item or at least continue it and kind of hash through these very important details and then come up with a process. And then after you've gone through that and it's equitable and people can come and pitch their crosswalk, then more power to them. Thank you very much.
Lori Mizuka.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. And I want to thank, I think that was Tom Reeves for the previous speaker. I agree 100% with what he said. And I want to be clear, and I hope everybody hears this, for myself and the many people who submitted comments and those attending the meeting, this isn't really a debate about rainbow crosswalks. It's a debate about the process, the priorities, fiscal and otherwise, and public trust. The mayor's plan was brought forward with barely 24 hours notice on a Friday before a holiday weekend during a serious budget deficit with no transparency or community involvement. That's not inclusion. It's more like political maneuvering. And I personally feel left out because I would like to be included in planning something so fun. So to suggest that opposition is rooted in discrimination is false and unfair. Many of us deeply support the gay rights community and the movement and want every resident to feel safe and valued. But we also expect honest governance, fiscal responsibility, and community inclusion. These values can and should coexist. The city is facing real needs, from deteriorating infrastructure to financial shortfalls. And the symbolic project done without process does not reflect responsible leadership. If this idea had come from a school group suggesting colorful sidewalk or a crosswalk near their campus, or as a community chalk art event to celebrate pride, something low cost, inclusive, and creative, it would have been embraced and applauded. That's the kind of Monterey we are. A community that collaborates, not one where one person paints over public space if it's their own personal canvas without consent or consensus. So let's possibly even not ignore the fact that Mayor is a founding member of Monterey Pride, and maybe it's conflict of interest and he should recuse himself from deliberations and voting on this matter. I say pause this and invite public dialogue and creative community-based ideas. That this idea deserves it. Everybody wants to be included. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Next is telephone caller ending in 436.
Okay, good afternoon, Council. This is Eloise Shem calling. And I did send in a written, not really request, but I guess comment about this issue. And I'm not really in favor of it. And some of the reasons that have already been spoken about are the cost. While it's not really an extravagant cost, it is, in my opinion, frivolous when the city is in deficit in terms of more important issues like pension payments, capital infrastructure, like the wharf, and other expenditures that warrant attention. While this resolution doesn't really improve the city in any meaningful way. And I think they said, well, we should be like San Diego, Cupertino, San Jose. But those places are larger cities with neighborhoods that probably have LGBTQ plus districts. Even San Francisco, they have an LGBTQ district, the Castro, I think it's called, and they don't have a decorative crosswalk. So also, I think it's not very pragmatic or practical to, for the elderly, it's a non-confusing messaging. For the elderly, they need direct and easy traffic and crossing so that they can discern what's going on, especially in this era of uncalm traffic in Monterey Peninsula. So I think it's not a good idea for safety reasons. Thank you.
Next is Luke Young. Luke, you may go ahead and speak. It looks like they've stopped participating. Next is Jan Schreiner.
Good afternoon, City Council. This is Jan Schreiner. I'm a volunteer with the aquarium, with Marina Coast Water District, with the Monterey County Democrat Central Committee. And today I would like to participate in your meeting with my personal opinions. One, I very much would like to support as much as possible all three. It adds art, it adds character, and it would be a tangible display of the city value drivers. As well as I support and applaud the city for bringing this forward. And I understand the constraints of budgets. I was going to put Alvarado and Pearl last of the three, but I heard PK Diffenbaugh, and I want to support that if you can only do one, let's start with Alvarado and Pearl. I also believe that it might be possible to raise funds from the community. I know in my past, I initiated Sharrows between CSUMB and Marina because a lot of people didn't realize you could get between the two without the freeway. And I was surprised at how many people donated to make the community connection. So helping everyone be included, having everyone have access, those are appreciated in the community in general. Not everybody, but in general, there's a lot of support for that. So please, if you can afford it, do all three. If you cannot afford it, Alvarado and Pearl, because that's where the school superintendent thought it would be most important to apply. Thank you for allowing my participation and good luck with your decision.
Thank you. Sorry, next is Brian McCarthy.
Hi, Mayor, members of the council. Brian McCarthy, resident and city council member of Marina. Thank you for considering the proposal. I was pleasantly surprised and encouraged to hear that your staff believes this can be handled in-house and at a relatively low cost. Cities across our region, including Monterey, have long used their streets to express civic values and community identity. From designations like Veterans Memorial Highways, Purple Heart Cities, other tributes to law enforcement and military service, public infrastructure has often served as a canvas for community values. Being in a military family, I personally am grateful for these acknowledgements. Please keep it up. Designations a taxpayer, by the way, has paid for with probably little or no process at all. It's important to recognize that using transportation infrastructure to convey messages is not new. In fact, it's a well-established practice. albeit often controversial. Consider names like Kit Carson Road or Sherman Boulevard. These names honor political figures and in doing so convey a form of public speech about those individuals. I speak in support of the project because it reflects and honors the current rich diversity of our collective community and acknowledges the struggles, past and ongoing, that have shaped who we are. One of the most inspiring parts of my experience in Marina has been hearing from residents, many of whom are white and cisgender, who approach me each year after our flag raising events to express how these symbols of inclusion mean so much to their own families and leave them feeling included, not excluded. It speaks volumes about the kind of community we are building together. You've spent a lot of taxpayer money tonight listening to me and the rest of the public on both sides of this issue, a step encouraged by our expensive democracy, and now implementing crosswalks to reflect the community input seems like a reasonable and meaningful next step. Thanks again for your time and listening, and thank you for advocating, to all of you for advocating for your community.
And our last caller with their hand raised at the time that you allowed is Andrea Olson.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. I'm attending this meeting to express a couple concerns. The first is fiscal, which is probably one of the least important, but definitely important to discuss. We have the Mercedes dealership looking at leaving our city, which is over $1 million in revenue that we won't be getting. We have event promoters that are talking about our high hotel costs for the event goers, and perhaps they're going to be pulling those large events that bring in a lot of revenue to the city of Monterey. I know in many of the meetings, money continuously comes up as an issue on how we don't have enough money. Other speakers have spoken to it. We're talking about value drivers and equity and inclusion and discrimination and all of those buzzwords that are very familiar to all of us in 2025. And I want to caution the council and the city. We have welcome signs to the city of Monterey that we have people that are being advertised on there being founding of Monterey, Winnipeg, De Portoro. Monterey wasn't lost, so it can't be founded by those individuals. And those people's names are still on Welcome to the City of Monterey, founded by. So we need to make sure that we're including all groups, because those of us who are the descendants of Native Montereyans, we've been discriminated against. And when I have to drive around town and see those signs advertised, it's pretty much a slap in the face. The other thing is I have no problem with rainbow sidewalks, but I have a permitted kid right now in my household. Does the DMV paperwork discuss what he's supposed to do at a rainbow crosswalk? Things like this. We've got a lot of foreign drivers. Is that touched upon when they're getting their international driver's license? That's a safety issue. Our people are going to know what to do. Thank you for your time.
Okay, and with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the council for a motion and deliberation. I want to start off by thanking everybody for showing up and sharing their public comments, whether speaking in support or against. This is true civic engagement. And I would offer, since doing this, being involved in local politics, I think this is probably the most engagement that I've seen amongst all the various emails that we received. That I've read through them all, at least as close up to the council meeting as possible. I think a few more came in after the council meeting got ready to start. And then all of you being here today, whether virtually or in person. So truly, thank you. And I want to give an extra thank you to those that are here to support this effort. Because as many of you know, I'm the first openly LGBTQ person to be elected on the Monterey City Council. And this is hard for me. So, you know, when PK was talking, some of you might have noticed I lost it a little bit. I had to take a step back. Part of it is the hate that is expressed. We've heard one speaker today talk about um, the values of the Bible and what that interpretation means for that individual, that message is literally saying you and your identity don't belong here. It is not acceptable. It is not right. And then on the other side, I have folks sharing, like when PK was speaking, about the experience that and the impact that it had to the youth in school. And I think back when I was in school, I was still closeted. I couldn't even accept it for myself. And I could feel the feelings that those students feel that PK was talking about. Because if I had that, it would have made the world of a difference for me. So what I would offer or suggest here is how amazing it is that the city of Monterey, more importantly than the sidewalk, has elected the first openly LGBTQ person on the Monterey City Council. So I think we should all be really proud of that. I'm really proud of that. I didn't run for the city council because of my sexuality. It is part of my identity. It is part of who I am. And I'm not going to shy away from that for anybody. Because not for my own experience, but because for those kids, because the kids that are still living at home that aren't accepted for who they are. I'll transition away from my own personal experience here and share that I think we should not do anything else today other than approve this item. Though based off of the feedback that I've heard from the community, I think the right thing to do is approve it contingent on private contributions being raised for this project. I hear some of the comments as it relates to the process and should we get approval from neighboring property owners or the business district. I think it's great to create a process, and I welcome a streamlined process to evaluate and consider proposals, but denying contingent on a process that wasn't there in the first place is an excuse to not approve a project. You cannot build a process along the way to then say, nope, can't do it because, I think this was an appropriate step in the process that we should have followed. But now I'm bringing it up. Let's not approve the project. So I think I welcome it. Let's consider what processes that we want to include, and let's make sure that we consider those moving forward. I do think it's helpful to hear from the business districts and the neighboring jurisdictions. So if it's necessary for the support for this to move forward, I would still say let's approve it contingent on, and if there's pushback from the business district, say by a certain date, then I'd say let's have it come back to the council. But if there's no pushback and everybody's on board, there should be no excuse why we shouldn't be able to move forward. And I would just offer that type kind of tactic is actually one of the things that frustrates people the most, particularly developers, when people come in along the way and say, oh, we need to do it like this. This should be considered first before we establish the process, create clear criteria, and allow people to move forward so that they're not wasting their time. So I welcome process improvement. Let's use that to move forward and not get in the way of a good project that could save lives, as spoken to so eloquently from some of the public members in the public. This is not about one group. This is about inclusion. This is about everybody. We're not talking about one group of people. As one of the speakers said earlier, folks in the LGBTQ community make up all different types of folk. Black, brown, Jew, there's cisgender, there's Native American, Indigenous. There are folks that are religious, Christian. There's non-religious folks. They make up all types of folks. And I think it's particularly important in this group. I would offer probably more important than any other group because of the lack of visibility. I remember when we hosted the first Pride event in Seaside in 2017, one of the volunteers came up to me right before I went on stage to kick off the celebration portion of the event. And they handed me an email that we had received from a local student. And I read it aloud during the opening Pride event. And the message said, "I wish I could be there today, but my parents told me I couldn't come." There are people living today, youth today, that cannot be comfortable with who they are. That's why visibility is so important for the queer community. I would just also offer that this is transparent. I hear some concerns from folks that we're trying to rush this through, that we're trying to do this behind closed doors. I don't understand. I'm struggling with understanding where that argument is coming from. Again, this is, if it's not the most, it's one of the most engaged issues that I've seen in the city of Monterey. So to say that we're trying to rush this through, I think is just grossly inaccurate. I think I heard the concern around public safety. One of the speakers, y'all are stealing my thunder with your comments earlier. If this investment, 15,000, 2,000, whatever it might end up coming to be, if this saves one life, just one life, if that one child comes by and sees this crosswalk and it makes the difference from them killing themselves, it is absolutely worth it. There should be no question why we do this. Somebody else spoke earlier about the kids sleeping on couches, and it was a person that was speaking against this. We should be investing this money towards trying to take care of folks that are sleeping on couches, don't have a place to live, the homeless. Interestingly enough, amongst the highest rates of homelessness exist within the LGBTQ community. Back to the point that I made earlier, because they're not accepted in their own household. They're the highest rates of suicide, as has been articulated. There's the highest rates of depression. We need to create safety for everybody in our community. And I think we do a pretty good job. I think, and I give lots of love and credit and appreciation to our police force, because they do a great job of creating that more hard infrastructure side of our public safety. But there are pockets that we're missing, and it's more to that soft side. And this does exactly that. I think there's also an argument to be made around our business values within the city of Monterey. I want to thank Monterey Peninsula Pride for continuing to host Pride every single year in the city of Monterey. I know that there was once an idea of moving Pride around to the different cities on the peninsula, but the board intentionally kept it here in the city of Monterey because of how central it is, how accessible it is. And the Pride event is one of the largest attended events that I've seen in Monterey. So all those people coming into the city of Monterey, dining in Monterey, attending the after party, it's a full day of festivities. And I would just offer that if you haven't had a chance to participate in those events, and if you've expressed any view or perspective of support for that community outside of maybe not supporting the crosswalk, I would charge you with attending some part of Monterey Peninsula Pride. It is the most family-friendly event that I've attended. I know that people have a perception around what a Pride celebration means, but I charge you, push yourself to go do that, check it out, be a part of our community, and show your allyship by showing up. But I want to thank the Pride organization because you help bring business to the city of Monterey. And I think it would be appropriate at some point to do an economic impact report to see what kind of value there is associated with that. And I think that the city of Monterey could be a partner in working with that organization and other LGBTQ related organizations by potentially creating a lavender district, following suit to Sacramento, that has seen great positive value from their lavender district and having a rainbow crosswalk. The social media opportunities, talk about visibility, and letting people know that Monterey exists and that we're here and we're open for business for everybody. I promise you, as soon as that crosswalk goes in, I'm going to go down there and take a picture of it and post it online. And I can imagine all the visitors from around the world coming here and doing the exact same thing. Alternatively, think about what that message sends when the media says the city of Monterey denied approving a rainbow crosswalk in the city of Monterey. What kind of message does that send? There was a comment around how much we have evolved, and yeah, there's been some progress forward. But as I articulated through some of the points that I made, I think there's a lot of work still to do, which is why I think it's important for us to do this. Getting close to my end of my comments here, so I appreciate you all letting me let this off my chest. This isn't about any individual advertising themselves. That was a couple of the comments that were shared. It's like, you don't have to force your, you don't have to put, there was a reference to somebody having friends that were part of the LGBTQ community and how they didn't want to have their status publicized. Nobody's telling you that you have to publicize your status. This is about making sure that we're being inclusive and sending that message to those that don't feel that they have that space to do so. And there was another public commenter that said it so well. This is gonna be my last comment, then I'm gonna ask staff a few questions. But it's a rainbow. I mean, it's a rainbow. It's like it's a beautiful piece of public art. Who doesn't like rainbows? All right, so a few questions for staff real quick. There was a question about violation of code. I think you all expressed that earlier, but I just wanted to have staff have the opportunity to address the question that came up during public comment about that.
So the vehicle code talks about the crosswalk, but also the METCD, which we said is a manual for uniform traffic control devices, does state that the sidewalk is defined by the two parallel markings. So as long as we have the two parallel markings, we would not be violating any of the vehicle code sections.
Perfect. And I would just I saw a positive head nod from our city attorney. So it seems like we're good there. I trust our expert staff in the room that are hired and paid what I would offer are decent salaries to do this work and provide us guidance on that. Thermoplastic was one of the other questions. There was research that was done, I'm assuming online, about the frequency required for the maintenance of that.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So thermoplastic is an interesting material. If you do place it on concrete, it has a much shorter lifespan. If you do place it on asphalt, it does last longer. So it also depends on the quality of the pavement you're placing it on. There are also, there's another material that's called methyl methacrylate. So say that again. Methyl methacrylate. So that is a spray-on material, and again, it depends on the quality of the pavement that you're spraying this on. It would last longer. It also has the different colors. So again, it depends on the quality of the pavement that you're placing it. If you have crumbly pavement or something that you can't adhere very well to it, like concrete, it'll probably not last as long. If you have a good quality pavement, it would last longer.
What are we looking at as far as a range and lifespan?
It depends on the traffic that you have at the intersection. So if you have an intersection that has 5,000 cars, then you're looking at a much longer lifespan. We always try to actually, when we're placing crosswalks, we actually try to place the white bars away from where the wheel paths are, so that the wheel paths are going on the non-marked areas. So we do have some considerations to try and make it last longer, but it really depends on the traffic. It depends on the on the pavement.
I just want to push this a little bit more. Are we talking about 2 or 3 years? Are we talking about 7 years, 10 years? A lot
So,
depends. It's a lot.
A lot depends. So let's say I think some of the crosswalks on Wave Street that are thermo placed on concrete, so it's a little more challenging. They've had about, I want to say, a 3 to 5 year lifespan.
Okay.
So it could be more, but I'd say probably you're looking at 3 to 5 years.
Okay. And that's on concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And then there was a question around danger, I think, and safety. I know that was a question that was asked, and we talked about it earlier, but any additional thoughts as it relates to the public comments that were made around? And I think Councilmember Rash also alluded to that in her questions around the impact that it might have on folks visually seeing that and driving and being distracted.
Those are hard to quantify, and as a nerdy engineer, I like to quantify. And safety is subjective. Sometimes it's not. We like to put numbers on things, but I'm going to say that looking at your phone or texting while driving is probably much worse than a decorative crosswalk.
That part. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. And then, if we move forward, and let's say that it requires this might be for Hans. So thank you, Andrea. If we move forward, let's say that there's some issue or concern and we need to have it come back to the council for whatever reason, and we need to have a special meeting next week to follow up on this. When would the staff need to know by in order to get this in time for Pride Month?
Well, Pride Month starts June 1st, right?
Right.
Yeah. So let's work from the opposite end, right? There will be no problems. And we will connect, as far as I understand, what the mayor was saying is you were considering accepting funding from the Pride organization to offset the cost. And you were saying also, if that's the preferred location, connect with OMBA and see what OMBA says. And if there is a resistance, then we would come back and bring it back. But other than that, if we get the green light for the rainbow crosswalk today, that will include some of the amendments to the motion that you just mentioned. I don't think there is a need to come back unless OMBA has severe challenges. Then we would come back and say that location doesn't work.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for entertaining my comments. And with that, I will open it up to the rest of the council. Not everybody at once, please.
Okay, thank you. So much to talk about. Thank you for everybody who participated, wrote letters. I know that's a lot of commitment of time, and we actually individually received a lot of letters as well. And then the letters that all the council received, and then many letters that went directly to the city manager's office. But thank you everybody for expressing your opinions. So I have just some general comments, and I still have some questions. And anytime I approach, something like this, I always fall to the question of, how do I resolve the disparity between those that are expressing their argument against and those that express their argument for, and where's the messaging and what's the tenor of the community statements. And once upon a time in college, I took a course, and it had to do with asking the question throughout the entire semester, which is, how do you define the public interest? And as my role in the city council, I found that to be one of the greatest challenges, because it's not just a 51% majority, and it's not just, if you have 75 for and 25 against, then that's the clear answer. It's really more of a gut feeling and a sense of our experiences, and throw in some wisdom and throw in some life's mistakes, and you kind of land on something that is right. But listening to the community on this one, it's been definitely engaging, diverse. I wouldn't even say polar opposites, some yes, some no, But interesting, as Gene Rash has mentioned, many of the letters, I mean, the majority of the letters, they were absent hate or disgust or displeasure one way or the other. It was very, very much across the board articulated their reasons why they would be in favor or not in favor for legitimate value-based, the way they see the decision. So it makes it easier to try and find and navigate that public interest, because there isn't any of the nastiness that's existed in this topic. Let me start off by saying this is a safe community. I had the privilege of serving this community for 26 years. Been to a lot of calls for a lot of kind of people, every range of people, choice, type of crime, type of event, horrendous, all across the board. And I was at many calls on Lighthouse at many of the nighttime entertainment locations. And I lived through the 70s and 80s and 90s and retired in 2011. So I saw the transition of society and our acceptance. And I wanted to make the distinction that there is a difference between acceptance and tolerance. Tolerance means you kind of put up with it and you bury it and maybe you ignore it. I think our society in this community is accepting. And I don't think that there's hostility that I saw in the 70s and 80s and 90s for the discrimination. Now, it does not mean that discrimination doesn't still exist. Discrimination, sadly, is the ugly side of human nature. Blacks, Italians, gay, straight, white. Sadly, there's a lot of groups that can be discriminated against. I too have been discriminated against as a white male. It's deplorable. Nothing that should ever be tolerated. Discrimination for anyone is part of what we all have to continue to fight. But this topic is not about discrimination and is not making a decision about favoring or supporting, whether you call it your being as a gay. As some said tonight, it's not a lifestyle, it's who you are. And I accept that. My lack of support for moving ahead for this has nothing to do with those who are aligning themselves with the pro movement to do this based on the fact that you want to represent gay rights or Pride Month. I see this more clearly as a safety issue. I think the mayor has resolved, and many of the speakers resolved, the conflict in spending city money. So I want to just go down my list and see if I can capture my thoughts and where I don't believe that I can support doing any kind of a deviation from a crosswalk. And I'm not sure that I would support a wave crosswalk if it was before me tonight for a deviation from any standard crosswalk and the wave crosswalk that's in Cannery Row. I draw a hard distinction in terms of using the crosswalk for something like this. I would fully support an option if there was a location for a wall, if it wasn't on the street, if it was on the edges of a park, on art in public places, but not on the crosswalk where vehicles and pedestrians navigate. So I'm not in favor of using the crosswalks for that kind of art of any kind. to recognize any group. So for me, number one, it's about safety. I don't think that we should be cluttering the visual for the purpose of celebrating any group or any event and using our crosswalks to do that. I think because it's a safety issue, it has everything to do with the visible, the tourists that come through, the foreign drivers that come through, too many colors, the distractions. I am just not a proponent of using them as a piece of art. We have lots of other locations that can be used that way. Sadly, this issue starts to look like it's one group against another, but I think the fact that we're having to make this policy and public decision is that it starts to feel like it is divisive because of the request and because the fact that it's before us that's identified one group over all other groups for this particular ask. What would happen is I fear that we would go down the line and have requests from other groups of minorities or social groups or some particular special interest. I'm of heritage, Irish heritage. Maybe there's a request that we have green and white and whatever else the colors are. A Festa Italia is coming. Would the Festa Italia want to have some markings? The Portuguese parade, any number of the events that we have, I think it just really opens us up to really having a difficult time deciding what's appropriate and what's not. And this kind of policy sort of sounds like it's at staff level, and they would be basing it on their view of their objective standard with an engineer in public works about whether it's yes or no. And then it doesn't come to the council. And I'm not saying I think the council should weigh in on every one of those decisions. I'm saying we should have the purity of the safety of the crosswalks as they're intended and not get involved in accepting and having to decide whether it's an appropriate request and appropriate colors for one group versus another one comes in. And it's an impact on staff time. It's a tremendous impact on staff engineers and public works where they have to participate in the back and forth design, the requests, the permit application. We have to collect a fee. We have to inspect it. We have to make sure it's hired, correctly done. I just think it's a whole piece of the work plan that I don't want to put our staff in a position where they have to face this. So I don't think that it's appropriate to expect that the city is going to receive the applications and it goes to city staff and they're going to be trying to use their objective collective thoughts in terms of it's a yes or it's a no. I think we should stay out of that business. I don't think it serves us well to say having this opportunity for any number of the groups to paint a crosswalk across town in other locations. We could very well see ourselves if we said yes tonight to 3 locations. And it's great that we've got volunteers that are going to find a way to pay for it. And we're not talking about city dollars now. But we could have 15, 16, 18, 20 of these all across town with a variety of different patterns and colors. So every crosswalk you come to has a little bit different variations of colors, celebrating whichever particular group is paid to have that installed. So I just don't think that's a good way to have traffic safety across the town. There was one other point I wanted to make. In this process, we talked a little bit about process. I think we sadly have excluded our neighbors, our businesses, the locations, the addresses that have businesses, the business owners, the building owners of the proposed locations. I think they've kind of been excluded from this because this process wasn't something that was highly announced. It did hit the news. It was on KSBW last night. We did comply with the posting with the Brown Act with the legal timeliness. So I honor the fact that the city did that correctly. We are doing this on a Friday night. The process has left a lot of our community out, and I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't feel like this is something that should have been on Friday. This should have been on a regular Tuesday night in the afternoon, and it should have been, promoted a bit more. This came to a surprise by a lot of folks, and that was evidenced by many, many of the comments that we received. And I want to just say one more thing. It really is just one more thing. I want to read a portion of a person that wrote, and I won't share their name because I haven't had time to ask if I could. So I'm just going to read this from one person who does not support doing this. This proposal is not about inclusion. It's about government endorsement of one group's beliefs, which excludes others by default. What about citizens of faith who do not want their streets or city streets used to promote this particular group? Or those who believe public property should be ideologically neutral? Are their views less worthy of dignity or affirmation? And I would say that we have many, many other locations throughout this community where any group can express their togetherness, their support, their love for each other, and the community-wide acceptance, I believe, is very wide. I just don't think the crosswalks are a place for artwork. I think artwork is great. I've got art in my house, as many of you do. We go to museums. We see art all over town. I love murals. I love to see that. I love to see that in gardens, on sidewalks, but not in the roadway where vehicles have to drive at night under diminished capacity with sight, age, new drivers, older drivers, buses, tourists from all over the world. So I just don't think it's a good idea. And I'm sure we'll get another chance at this, but I'll stop right there. And I can't support this for the reasons I've mentioned. And again, the letters that we received were many. I printed out as many as I could up to today. I read every one of them. I responded to about 50 yesterday and about another 30 today. I still owe a bunch more responses for the late ones that came in today. Much appreciate all of the opinions. As I said, they were firm in their position, but they weren't nasty. And that was so refreshing to see. I'm holding 52, and I printed out these just from yesterday. And these 52 were opposition, and the majority of the opposition was based on city dollars being spent for one group over all others, that the city policy, if it said yes to this, would open up a cascade of a variety of other groups and clutter our streets, and it would be unsafe. So the themes that I read were not safe, don't spend city money, why on crosswalks, why not somewhere else? And if it was going to be done, why at the busiest crosswalk in the whole city at the head of Alvarado, and one of the worst places to do it because there's so much difficulty getting through that intersection anyway. But that was kind of the theme of these 52 letters, and look forward to hearing from everybody else and your views. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Smith.
Lord, give me wisdom. I wonder if the transportation triangle wouldn't be the perfect place to celebrate diversity. I have to agree with Councilmember Smith. I'm just worried about the safety of doing this expression in the streets. I find when I drive, everything's distracting. I'm not on my phone. I'm not doing anything. And the amount of tourists that we have is difficult. There's a lot going on. We have a lot of five-way intersections. So I too am very reluctant to open the bag of using the streets where cars are driving as a form of expression. And I do not believe that we can limit it to just one group. I would like to look for perhaps other locations like the transportation triangle or other great ideas. One member of the public suggested a variety of flags as you're walking across the streets. So I join in the safety concerns. I would be very welcome to have a forum where all these different ideas or hesitations are addressed. I can't today support this when the issues of safety have been discussed for perhaps 4 minutes. That's not enough for me. I don't think that having about 36 hours has been enough for myself personally, and I doubt the broader community outside this room. I think that was a mistake. I think it's unfortunate. I think we have to take longer with this. We have to bring in our business community. We have to get a more than just a 50-50 on this. We've got to figure out a way for it to work. And I don't think we're there. As I mentioned when my questions, I'm sure it was obvious, and I'm not satisfied. I'm distressed with the process. And as an attorney, I can rather see that we're segregating out protections for having an ordinance for the rainbow crosswalk. I understand the legal writing. What I don't understand is that we are collectively saying we're doing this for Pride Rainbow walks, and we aren't doing it for others. I think those are very fair issues that we need to talk about, especially given the concerns of our native tribes. That is disturbing. They've got a lot of culture here too, and I don't have a sense of balance with the approach. I'm very uncomfortable with offloading, even if they want it, onto staff, the interpretations of what's decided about decorative art. I think we collectively need a policy on of having this, and actually, I wouldn't put it on the streets. I wouldn't have the discourse intertwined with public works. So I wouldn't have it be an ongoing thing. But if we do, we need to figure out, who can apply, how's the funding, how's the maintenance, and issues that really have not been developed. I agree with Luis, and that the streets should stay a neutral area, and that we're going to face, why are we going to use public property as expression? And then what about other groups? I think those are valid, fair concerns to hold. And I'm sad that anyone that people would label these kinds of hesitations that I have as a rejection of any group of people, because it's not that. It's just pure and simple not that. It should be privately funded if it goes through. We have to figure out who can apply and who can't. We just have a lot of things to figure out. And I think we need to take more time. I think we need to think of alternative ideas. I don't think we're quite ready. And let me see if I've left out. Yeah, I think you get the drift of what I'm saying. I'm very concerned about what I brought up about the visually impaired people. And I want a forum where these are really developed. That's just happening in 36 hours with so much unanswered is disconcerting. So let's see. Yeah, I talked about the business community funding. This would be perfect in a pedestrian only location. If we ever get a pedestrian mall, we could work on this idea. But I see just a lot of concerns that I think are valid and that I think need to take more time. And I think I've said it. Thank you very much. And thank you all for your attendance and your expressions on both sides.
Wait, you want to say something?
I didn't realize how controversial rainbows can be. That's my attempt at humor. So I also appreciate all the comments that came in via email and here today. I'm going to take a slightly different angle, because we've heard a lot today about many different points, many different concerns, many different considerations. But I think once we start sifting through all that, really what it comes down to is, what is the impact on human beings? That's really what it comes down to. Everything else, to me personally, is just smoke and mirrors. It's not about funding. It's not about it's not even about art. It's about the impact that this can have to real human beings, the impact that it can have to our residents, our neighbors, our visitors. It's talking about marginalized groups. How do we put in a slight effort to reduce how marginalized some groups are? What can we do as a community to reduce that push to silence these groups? Being a Latino, I have felt these things in my own group, in my own community. And I'm not a part of the LGBTQ community, but I see that we can draw quite a few parallels in terms of the struggles for minority groups that historically have been taken out of the conversation, not included in decision-making tables, marginalized, discriminated against, and just undervalued. So I'm an ally. I think that the purpose of these rainbows have a much greater impact than what we would see on the surface.
It's about elevating voices. And as a community, advocating and moving forward with these crosswalks, as has been stated, we would be sending a message, not only to our residents, but to people who visit us, that, yeah, you are welcome here. And never mind what you choose to do in your own personal life. However you wish to present yourself and express yourself, all that is welcome here, without judgment. I think here we have also a very good opportunity to more clearly and in a more impactful way define what we mean by the Monterey Way. We talk about how friendly we are, how what beautiful scenery we have, how we welcome tourists, and we do that all the Monterey Way. Well, let's add this to that as well, right? Let's say that the Monterey Way does include members of all groups in a welcoming way. I want to speak a little bit about discrimination, since it was brought up. Discrimination doesn't have to be a blatant act. It could come to us as individuals in the form of microaggressions. And that's something that might be micro, but it can have a long-lasting effect. And I mention this because I personally had an experience not so long ago, maybe about a couple months ago, where at one of our hotels, I was having a drink, step to the bathroom, come back. And I was waiting for someone. And as I was heading back to my seat, I realized that the person I was waiting for was arriving. And I happened to be close to the area where the host was standing. And I'm, dressed in a suit. I'm professionally, I'm looking professional. And as I'm waiting for the person who was at the distance, about 5 feet from me comes a gentleman, looks me in the eye and says, "I'll take a table for 2, please." And I share this story because I would almost guarantee that if the color of my skin was different, I would not have gotten that question. Those are the moments, right, that we're trying to reduce, that we're trying to minimize. Heck, we're trying to eliminate. And if painting a rainbow on a crosswalk is going to help towards that end, I'm all for it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for the positions that everybody takes. I'm going to suggest, because it seems like we're in a deadlock here, that we continue this item. And with that, we use this as an opportunity to notify the business district, business community, get their feedback and input. I think it would give an opportunity for Dr. Barber, who is an equal member of this body and makes up the full representation of the representation of the city. I guess I'm just wondering, when does this come back? Like, what does that look like for us to bring this back? And I guess I kind of do a check-in again with you, Hans, on this. As far as timeline, time frame, what does that look like for for us to do that. I would just offer before staff responds too on this. I would not try to stifle, in no way trying to stifle public comment. I would want to go into it being more intentional and mindful of time, because I think we did do a really good job of receiving a lot of public input. I think it's pretty clear where people stand. Not to say that we wouldn't continue to receive public comment on that, and hopefully folks can maintain the focus of additional public comments on the opportunity to provide feedback and input on any changes or any new information that's received. So I just do a quick check-in with you, Hans. I know we probably have to get a sense from the council as far as availability, but
so Mr. Mayor, if you allow me a quick dialogue with you also. So it was mentioned in the letters that the constituents felt it should be on a regular council meeting. So I would suggest we should have it on a regular council meeting. I understand you will be not here in person on June 3rd. So the next council meeting then is June 17th for a regular scheduled council meeting. Of course, it's the pleasure of the council to have a special meeting as well, if you like to have that.
I don't need to be here. I mean, I will be here, but not physically here. I'll be participating remotely. So
then we can put it on the June 3rd meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I think what you were talking about was some outreach to business neighbors. I think that's appropriate. I'd like to hear from the staff how they believe that they could do that to make sure that we have touched the community that we feel that we should by June 3rd. Why rush it? Because it sounds like there's a couple other policy implications here that we might be asking staff for. So why not do it when you're back and do the second meeting in June? That gives us a greater opportunity to have the effective outreach that I think that we need. I'd also like to know, is the council leaning towards the question of staff? Could we designate the transit plaza? Could we designate a particular sidewalk? And what would that look like? What would the staff weigh in terms of using a sidewalk in an appropriate manner? And then that also involves, well, how do they make the selection and the process? And I think we still have to get back to the process of whether or not the staff is going to have enough guidelines that they're going to need where they can judge, weigh, if it is on a sidewalk and it is in a public place like the transit plaza. So I'm thinking that it needs more time.
I'm a little bit confused because one of the comments that you made was not putting more on staff. And so it sounds like you're doing that by offering another alternative, which is to look at sidewalks. So I'm fine with that being included, but it's just interesting.
Well, and the reason, and let me justify the reason, because I think that it's a significant community desire. We've talked in previous years about art in public places. I think that's a fair question. We do need to have a process. We do need to reach out, and I don't want to rush it where we're expecting city staff to reach out in a short period of time. I don't think it's a big work plan kind of thing. I think it's an internal staff examination of if it's sidewalks and it's public spaces, like I'll just use the transit plaza as maybe an appropriate place. What would staff say about using sidewalks in that public space? And what would be the process that they would look at for intake? Because no matter what we do, I think we still have to hone in on what that intake piece looks like. Are we charging a fee for the permit? Is there an application that has been developed? Are there known design features that we'll be able to advertise to folks that making the inquiry? So I think that we've got a bigger problem, and that's honing in on the actual yes or no when it's involving sidewalks and public places. And I don't see any reason to rush it. Please.
So, let me try to say it in by summing up what I hear council say. There's a process in place already. The process would work the following way, that the council could state to agendize, we would like to have a crosswalk for this and this purpose. The council can then state to the agendizing council member, yes, we'll bring it forward, or no, we are not interested. Then the council member can bring this item forward, and staff will provide the council with a recommendation with respect to that suggestion. And as the city attorney outlined also on questioning by Councilmember Rash, there have to be findings to be made by the city, and then the city can make findings with respect to would you like to support. We have upcoming a resolution about indigenous people living on Dutra Street. The council indicated clearly you wanted to deal with that, and that is coming in first or second meeting in June, if I could recall correctly. So it's council's choice. There's a process for that in place. It's not cumbersome. It's not difficult. You have that process in your governance, how you want to deal with that. The outreach that Councilmember Smith was asking about, that has to be done for the crosswalk on Alvarado Street, is fairly straightforward. I would go to Peter Corpresi, who is or Rick Johnson right now, who's filling in for Peter, and I would say, hey, pull your businesses, find out what they say about that. If council would like to have a crosswalk on Lighthouse Reside, guess what? We unlocked. Peter Corpresi is also the guy in charge for that Lighthouse business district. And then we'll take it from there. But if the report comes back, our businesses are fine with that, they don't see a problem with that. Hey, we went through the process, and you have now the feedback from the businesses that you wish to desire. That can be done by June 3rd. I hope that helps.
Okay, Mayor, there's just one little piece here. I want to make sure we're doing this right, because we do have a governance policy. It looks like if we took a vote today, we're going to probably be at 2-2. I'm just guessing here. So if we vote today on this, it'd be 2-2. And the ask is, can we use sidewalks? And if that motion fails or it's tied, it's 2-2. So I don't think we can give staff direction acting on anything about doing anything on a crosswalk, because we don't have a majority of the council that's giving direction about a crosswalk. So how do we move forward with staff doing anything until we have a majority vote that says move ahead?
I think we're just trying to continue the item. We're not voting on what to do with the crosswalk. We're just continuing it because we're not going to resolve it today, right? As you alluded to. So I'm just gonna try this. I'm gonna move to continue the item to the next council meeting.
Regular scheduled council meeting.
There's a motion on the table, so we just need a second.
Okay. I just have some questions or clarifications.
Sorry, real quick, I just want to make sure we have a second on the item before.
I'll second.
Perfect, thank you.
So I still am requesting some guidance on the visually challenged and the research I was looking at. So if that could occur with staff, or, I mean, I'm concerned about that. I want to hear from that challenged group as well. And when I mentioned the transit center, I'm not even thinking sidewalks. I'm thinking furniture and furniture and benches and rainbows or something along that line. So I'm not sure I'm suggesting sidewalks, because although I think they're a lot safer than streets, and I would not be I'm not saying I'm opposed to sidewalks. My vision that I thought of was just the welcome that the audience, members of the audience were wanting to express to tourists and to ourselves and each other and our families. It seems to me that a lot of people arrive at Monterey to that transit center, and maybe Cali P too. Is that just those kinds of ideas? What I'm really saying is, I think we can do this if we take the time to really brainstorm. I think we can come up with something that meets what we're all saying. I think we just need to include more people and more time.
Is there a concern with the motion?
No.
Okay, please.
Again, it would help to clarify the item. So, Councilman Morash, when you speak about you like to have more clarity from the visual impaired, who do you have in mind? Exactly who?
Well,
Because we have
right.
Let me, if I just may elaborate a little bit on my challenge to identify the specific group you like to talk to. The ADA compliance is mandatory by federal law. The code that we use for that has been reviewed and approved as not an extra challenge for disabilities or visual impaired as more than they already have. So it's in compliance with that. So now, are you suggesting to go to a nonprofit and say, hey, what do you think about those federal regulations that would allow us to do the crosswalk? And then basically with that information coming back, you would then basically follow somebody else's ideas that are not vetted by federal law or by science.
So you're suggesting, and perhaps educating me, that the federal codes around transportation have already included blind people or visually challenged people. Does that include the colors of walking art?
Yes, and I would ask that the Public Works Director one more time steps up and just elaborates on this point when we talk about the selected colors and the contrast. And again, the general idea was that this is allowed as long as you have two clear white markings left and right of the selected rainbow crosswalk.
Well, then we need to amend our own policy that says muted colors.
No, maybe that was explained also. Andrea, if you could help one more time.
Yes. So what we did is we just put what the FHWA had as guidance. Guidance is not standards. So there are federal standards and federal guidance. Also, MUTCD does say to increase the contrast because in my experience in looking at ADA guidelines, and at one point we had the honor to walk around with a visually impaired veteran, and he was showing us what challenges he had. So one of the things that we need is to make sure that there's contrast. So when we have the 12-inch wide white band, we need to have another 6-inch or 12-inch darker AC colored, or sometimes when we have striping on, for example, a concrete street, the white sometimes disappears on a concrete. So we paint black next to it so that it pops out. So there are ways to make that very contrasting and still have the decorative element. So in the slide that Mark showed, it showed those white bands are very important.
Mhm.
And then the things that sort of happen in the middle are the decorative things, as long as they're not interactive. You know, you don't want to put hopscotch and things that are going to have people just playing around the crosswalk. As long as there's a contrast, as long as it's not advertising. And then also you don't want to, you know, for example, put a pattern of little stop signs or things that will confuse the driver. So
As the ADA coordinator, I'll also share that what's even more important is the tactile surfaces on the ramps going into and above the crosswalk. So, you know, the fact that we have at all the proposed intersections, the contrast and the tactile domes that allow those who are walking with a cane or other type of assisted tool that they're able to enter the crosswalk and then exit the crosswalk safely.
Thank you. That's all helpful. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Please.
And maybe, Andrea, maybe you can share a little bit of your experience in terms of temporary installations, and I'll share a little bit more context before you go up to a podium. So in having done personally some transportation planning work in the past, there were instances where the agencies that I was working with in trying to pilot some infrastructure used temporary materials just to kind of test out, right, what was to be installed, whether that be crosswalks or roundabouts, whatever that was. So I'm wondering if maybe something like that could be considered, you know, as a more temporary installation, quote unquote, right, versus maybe what you're referring to. And I don't know, maybe.
sure. So some of the times when we're doing construction, we do use temporary tape. I really don't know what colors they come in. So my I would just be concerned that they may not last more than a couple of weeks, depending on a tape, because they're just meant to be temporary. I think when we talk about temporary, is if we were to do this on the inexpensive side, which we're thinking about using oil paint with some kind of additive for slipping, and do it in house. And this is when we're trying to get to that price of, you know, just under $2,000. The reason why we call it temporary is because I don't want to tell you that we're going to use oil paint on a crosswalk and it's going to last 2 years. It probably is not. So it would fade away. Once it's a bit faded, we'd come back and paint the white bars on top. Now, a more permanent crosswalk would then be a thermoplastic or, you know, some sort of traffic rated paint or methyl methacrylate. So I think that that's a distinction between temporary and permanent.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to offer that just as maybe another point to consider, understanding that there's some in the intersections that are being considered potentially high traffic right counts on all of them, I think. So
especially Lighthouse.
Yeah. So that would quickly show in a very temporary installation. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, so you're proposing that it be tabled.
Continued.
And then you're thinking continue to the choices June 3rd or the second meeting in June.
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
I think the motion is June 3rd meeting.
So
So I would leave it open. I would maybe amend my motion to allow staff the flexibility to move it if they don't feel like they've received enough input in the meantime.
Yeah, I would prefer the second meeting in June, because I think that the community can weigh in. If the ask of the community is still the same question, sidewalks, that's the ask, right? Crosswalks. So the ask is still based on this agenda item.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think the community needs more time.
Okay.
Yeah, my preference would be the second meeting in June.
Okay.
For the reasons I've stated, I think It gives staff a little bit more time, gives the community more time to go to the proposed locations, and also watch this video, listen to all the testimony we've already had. Certainly, they need to read the letters, and I think they need to weigh in, and we'll still hear a lot more. And it's summer. Kids are getting out of school, graduations, starting of vacations. I just don't think there's a reason to rush it.
Yeah, it's Pride Month is coming up, and I don't understand how doing it in the middle of beyond the middle of the month makes sense, given the obviously the level of sensitivity to it, and I'm not trying to go into a debate with you about this. I don't understand your logic. All that being said, I'm wondering if so this is a public hearing item, and I'm wondering how the process works if we close the public hearing process now, and what that means as far as when this comes back.
Sure. If the hearing today were closed, then Dr. Barber could watch this video and be fully prepared to participate in deliberation. So there could just be deliberations and a vote without it opening back up to public comment. However, what I'm hearing from the council and from the motion is that new information will be solicited and presented, specifically maybe from OMBA, maybe some other visually impaired groups, or additional information might be brought back. That will be new information. And so I would recommend that it be opened up again for public comment for that reason.
And so if that's the case, there's no need to close the public hearing. We would just
You're just
continue.
continuing it. Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that explanation. That's helpful. All right, any other comments? All right, we're going to call the question. So I'm going to repeat the motion just so it's clear. It's to continue this item to the June 3rd council meeting, which is the next regularly scheduled council meeting. We're all on the same page. We're understand. Okay, making sure we're all understanding, at least all those in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3-1. That's it. Hold on. Let me just navigate here.
Closed session.
We're going to close. Do we have to do closed session today?
No.
Okay.
Why don't we?
Well, we scheduled this to be from 2 to 5, and we're well beyond that. And I had some stuff scheduled, assuming that it wasn't going to take this long.
Do you have any time at all, like 15 minutes that you could?
How long do we think?
I'm sorry if I could interrupt. So because the meeting has gone later, we've already let Jana already know, who's staff to, okay. Well, she's not, we can actually, because we actually do, there is one person who commented, who wants to comment on public comment, but
Continue.
Yeah, he preferred for it to be continued, and he's from the crematorium team.
Oh, okay.
Table,
Got it.
because we're not sure of the date. Table. Do it. So I'll move to table closed session items. It's been moved and seconded. Take it out to the public. Anybody online wish to speak on this item? Use the raise hand function. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? Seeing nobody in the chamber, so I'll go back to Zoom. I'll do a countdown to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No hands raised.
There's nobody on Zoom. Bring it back to the
Oh,
council.
you just went up.
Oh, we just closed it.
Okay.
So we will do a last check with the council. Any last minute comments on the motion? The table closed session?
Oh, no comments.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
So we're done?
All right, meeting adjourned. He said no. You know, I think I've lost everybody. Let's just let people go. Thank you. We'll go to adjourn.